Let's go. Let's start.
All right. Good morning, Mayor. To review the agenda this morning, we're going to have clerk training for council, and then we'll, at around 10 o'clock, have economic development by Wayne County Development Alliance, and then around 11 o'clock, North Carolina Department of Commerce will do rural economic development presentation. We'll have a budget update from the finance director following that, and then we'll review the retreat decisions or actions from council board staff. Over to you. Thanks, Laura.
Good morning.
Good morning, Laura.
It's good to see you all today. Thank you for allowing us this time to share with you information about Granicus. Please be patient with us during this time, during this training. This is a learning process for us as well. We've been training, Melissa and I and Brad have been training on Granicus for about almost a year now. But this is our first live training. We will also do a mock meeting and let one of these run in the background in one of the coming meetings. But just be patient with us. We're learning as well as you are. So we're going to start with a training video. It's just a 15-minute video to kind of see exactly what Granicus is about. And then we'll walk through a little bit of a live meeting that we've made to show you on your iPads how things will look. So Granicus is an agenda management software. It will streamline the meeting process by saving. We can access meeting materials on any device to view it, and also offer citizens and interested parties digital access to the meeting agenda, live webcasting, video recording, and minutes in a central searchable portal. iLegislate, which is a component of the Granicus software, enables council and staff to review the meeting agendas and supporting documents. During the meetings, it will also serve as a way for council to vote on the items, and votes will be displayed for the public to see. Melissa and I thank you for supporting us with this management software, and we're going to start the video.
Before I begin talking about the iLegislate application, I do want to bring one thing to your attention. iLegislate is a free download. You can either choose to place this URL, this granicus.com/ilegislate-download/ in your browser, or you can simply go and type in Google iLegislate download, and it will bring you to this screen. If you have any questions in regards to what your domain is, please contact your administrators and they can assist you. The username and password is going to be formulated from Media Manager. So if you need a username and password, you can set one up in Media Manager, or your administrators can assist you. I have my username already populated in, so I'm going to go ahead and put in my password. And then I'm going to go ahead and click sign in. Once I click sign in, the system brings me directly to my agenda screen. The agenda screen will display the current month's agenda. However, if you would like to view previous month's agendas, you can simply utilize these arrows down here at the bottom of your screen to toggle back and forth between months. Over here to the left-hand side, we have a navigation panel. We are currently on our agenda screen. To access any notes that we have made, we would click on our notes field. Bookmarks, we can bookmark within the iLegislate application. We can bookmark items. Any bookmarks will be listed here. And then we have videos. Videos are going to display our videos or audio of the meeting. Let's begin by talking about agendas. To view an agenda, I'm going to simply click on the agenda I would like to view. So I'm going to go ahead and view the January 3rd, 2019 meeting at 8 o'clock p.m. You'll see that the meeting body will be listed here, City Council. The date for which the meeting occurs will be listed here. And then to view the agenda, I'm going to simply click View. Once I click View, the screen will bring me to the agenda that has been published by your clerks. You'll notice that I have my headers on my agenda, so roll call, consent, public comment, old business, new business, and any items that are listed under those headers, okay, will be displayed directly under. If an item has a paperclip associated with it, that's going to indicate that that item has an attachment. Let's go ahead and click on an item with an attachment. We have this item here, consideration for a new stop sign. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and that will bring me to information regarding my agenda item. At the top here, we have the title of our item. Over here, we have no public comment. So if there was a public comment that is associated with this item, it would be listed here. And then we have the Add Bookmark feature. If I click Add Bookmark, what that's going to do is that's going to bookmark that item, and I can review those bookmarked items under my bookmarks here. We do not have an action associated with this item, so the screen displays no action. If there was an action, it would be listed directly here. Directly below that, we have attachments. We have two listed attachments here. Cover page, and then this other attachment. Let's go ahead and click on my cover page attachment. If I click on that attachment, the system brings me to an Adobe Reader. I can utilize this zoom feature here to zoom in and out of my attachment. And then I can use these functions at the top to adjust my view. If I need to print my attachment, there is this printer option. Download will allow me to download my attachment. Save annotations, if I make any annotations, so notes, highlights, things like that. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Those annotations will be saved going forward. Clear annotations will clear any annotations that I have made. Down here at the bottom, these options will allow you to go in and to make annotations to your attachment. Your annotations are not public. They are only associated with your user account. So for example, I have my highlight annotation. If I click on my highlight annotation, I can select a color. And then I can highlight something within my document here. I have, for example, I can draw on my attachment by using my draw feature. I have a note here, so if I click create note, I can add a note. I have a strikeout feature, which will allow me to strike out any wording here. And then delete's going to allow me to just delete my annotations that I've made. Okay. Now, if I want to save these annotations and I want to be able to review them at a later time, I'm just going to click Save here. To clear my annotations, I would click Clear. That's going to remove any annotations that I've made. To go back to my previous screen, I can either click my back arrow here, or I can click on my item details, and it will bring me back to my item. Notes is where you can make any notes that will only be associated with your account. If I save my note, I can review all of my notes utilizing the Notes component here. I can toggle back and forth between agenda items using my Next, or I can simply return to my agenda by clicking my agenda's hyperlink here. You'll notice that consideration for a new stop sign has some additional icons associated with it now. So we have a little bookmark item here, okay, and that just indicates that there is now a bookmark associated with that item. And then we have a little sticky note. The sticky note just indicates that I have placed a note in regards to that item. Now, if you need to go back and edit your note or edit your annotations on your attachment, you'll just simply click on that item again, and then you can update your note or annotations accordingly. And then just please remember to always click the Save option. Looking back directly under my agendas, I have my Notes component. If I click on my Notes component, that will list all of my notes for the current month. I can utilize my arrows here to toggle back and forth between previous month's notes. You'll notice that with my notes, it will display what my note says, what item the note is associated with, what meeting it is associated with, and then if I click View, the system takes me directly to that note. I can always return to my Notes screen by clicking Notes here or clicking Notes on my side navigation panel. If I click Bookmarks, Bookmarks just allow me to view my bookmarks. It will bring me to my current month's bookmarks, but I can always utilize my arrows to toggle back and forth between previous month's bookmarks. I can always view the item by clicking View here, and it takes me directly to the bookmarked item. If I need to remove this bookmark from the item, I'm going to simply click Remove Bookmark, and there will no longer be a bookmark associated with that item. The last section in iLegislate is going to be the videos. Videos are going to display based on the search criteria that you have listed down here. So currently it's displaying all months, but if you want to just select a certain month, you can simply click June, and it will display June's videos. To view a video, you're going to simply click on that video. And then to return to the video screen, you'll just click Videos. If there are timestamps associated with the video, you can simply click on that timestamp and that brings you directly to the placement. So for example, if I click public comment here, the video will simply bring me to where the public comments are. That is an overview of the iLegislate application. Thank you for watching this video and take care.
So, did that seem too bad? It's a little complicated, right? It won't be that bad once we get used to it. I think you guys will really like it. I know the public will like it. There's so many things that we'll be able to do with it. So, we are going to do a mock agenda. So, Brad and LaToya are going to be kind of helping walk around to make sure you're logged in. If you have any problems getting to the screen that we need to get to. And Melissa, if she gets a chance, she'll help us well. So we're going to kind of walk through one, and we've added a few things to let you kind of see what it's about. We'll also do a little bit of voting, so you can see what voting looks like. So the first thing we've got is launching and signing into iLegislate. So if you haven't already, LaToya's around. If you need some help, just raise your hand. Tap the iLegislate icon on your iPad to open the iLegislate. Most of you, we've already pulled them up for you. In the first field, you'll enter your name of your Granicus platform host, which is goldsboronc.granicus.com. You'll enter your username and then your password and tap save. And then, if I remember right, you won't have to do it anymore after you do it the first time. I don't think I do. So once you've done that and you've logged in, you will join the meeting. And you should see it similar to right here. Today's date, we've listed one for 2/25/21. So if you look on your iPad for the 2/25/21 meeting. And then if it gives you an option to join, please join. If it doesn't, let me know.
Oh, that's all I gotta do.
They take you a minute to
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, first name, dot, last name.
First name and last name?
First name, yeah, and then dot, last name.
You ready to talk? I can hear you now. Join is on this.
Okay, has everybody got their agenda up?
Not yet.
All right, hang on. Walk around some.
Now sign in.
Still connected. Okay, it takes a few minutes.
Just learn
If you
it.
click on join, it'll take you a minute to join, but let me know when everybody's in.
Wasn't the one at Goldsboro, NC? Let me try that again.
Good.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Your screen gone? Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you, ma'am.
And then now you're going to click on that.
It takes a
Join.
couple of minutes to,
Join.
Okay.
All right.
or it did for me.
Okay, is everybody in?
But you put a dot in there. Put a dot in there.
Did you click on it? Okay. Click on City Council.
All right.
Click on City District.
Let's do it connected.
City agenda.
Put me in.
It's still connected.
everybody in yet? All right, so, just give me a second. Let me pull mine up as well. Okay, so if you walk through, Brad, is there a way to pull the iPads up here? There's not, right? Okay. In a better world, you'd be able to see it up here. Today, not so much, but we're gonna walk through it. So on your agenda, you'll see your work session, your adoption of the agenda, your old business, and your new business, just like a normal council meeting, a normal retreat, a normal agenda. So the first thing that I've put up there for you, under new business, if you'll click on retreat dates approval test. So we've got, if you look on the screen back behind you for right now, the one by Brad, it'll kind of show what the public will see when we get ready to do the voting. Melissa will be taking roll call at the beginning, so it'll populate your, excuse me, take this mask off. It'll populate your names up here. That makes it easier for the voting, or that makes it possible to vote. So if you go to, yep, go back to adoption of the agenda on your iPad. If you'll go back, click your back button. We need to do the adoption of the agenda. So Melissa,
I have hit motion. Do you guys see on your iPad, where you can make a motion? Did it populate?
Go back. Okay.
I mean, do we want to try to adopt the agenda? Is that what we're trying to do? Is all we got to do is hit it? Huh?
I did that, and that puts me in here.
I don't see it doing anything, Melissa.
I don't either, and I've got,
Well, our side seems to be working okay.
I did roll call.
Like I said, this is definitely a trial version, and anytime you guys, if y'all want to come and sit down with us individually and do it, we can walk through it easily that way as well. It might be better for most of you. We just kind of wanted you to get an idea of what's going on, and what you can see. Give Melissa one more shot.
When are we trying to use this?
Well, we'd like to run it in like a March meeting behind it, just as a test, and then start using it in April. That's what we'd like to do. We'll see how that goes.
Do what?
But we'll see how that goes.
Probably the second meeting in March.
Yeah.
Time to get a little more training.
Well, we're gonna run it in the background just so that we can see how things go.
But you're not going to ask them to do anything on Monday.
Okay.
That's good.
Not yet.
New technologies, I always do.
Well, our big thing is, it's gonna make things easier for you guys to be able to see the voting. So instead of everybody having to raise their hand, and nobody's sure who's raising what, you'll be voting on your screen, and your votes will populate so the public can see them on the screen, and so you can see them on the screen. So there's no doubt who's voted for what. It'll also make minutes easier for Melissa and I, because it'll populate most of what we do into format already, and so we're not spending so much time on minutes.
Lauren, while she figuring it out, it mentioned about the public comment, and I know now we do not include public comments into our minutes. Are we gonna start doing that?
I'm not sure yet. I think a lot of that part, that was some of what she was talking about, the public comment tab, I think we could use that for like public hearings. Which is part of what else, public comment on that item.
Laura, does comments on my notes become public record?
No, sir.
Okay.
I don't believe so. Let me
We
confirm.
better check all of
Yeah, we needed confirmation.
Yeah, let me confirm that.
I think it probably could be if it was requested.
Maybe, but let me check and make sure.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, while she's doing that, let me go through a few of these so you kind of see what we're doing. So we did the joining of the meeting, requesting to speak and speakers. Each item is highlighted in I Legislate as it is addressed by the clerk during the meeting, and you can tap other agenda items to navigate them. If you want to request to speak on an item, you can click this button on each item. Tap the agenda item you request to speak on, and then tap the request to speak in the lower right-hand corner. If you want to withdraw your request to speak, it's right here. And in order to view who is asking to speak, it's here. The meeting chair can tap that button and see who's in line to speak, who is asked to speak on that item. So, making or seconding a motion, the motion and second buttons are highlighted based on the state of the meeting. So council members can tap the motion button to make a motion on the agenda item. So instead of having to holler out, I want to make the motion or whatever, so you go right here and you click on it to the left to make the motion. If you decide you want to withdraw the motion, the same thing as with the request to speak, it's here on the left. If another council member has already made the motion, you'll see the second button come up, and if you want to second the motion, you just tap on the second. If you want to withdraw the second, same thing, right there, bottom left.
Are we gonna see this happening in real time? So
Yeah.
like, if I click the motion button, is the board gonna be able to know that I made that motion? Does it like pop up like a ding, or?
I think you'll see it on the bottom of the screen, because once you've made the motion and hit the button, the word motion's going to go away and won't be there anymore. So the next person has to hit the second.
How is the motion made, the terminology? of the motion?
Yeah.
Correct.
Is it a verbal
What do you think?
typed in?
I will have to type in the motion, and then
Yeah.
I'll hit the vote button, and theoretically, it's supposed to pop up on there for you guys to register your vote.
So are you gonna type in all the motions? You are?
Which is the same thing we're doing now. She's doing now. So,
Well, she hears it verbally and then does it afterwards.
right. But and she can even go back in after the meeting and type it in fully.
Point is it's clear up front before people vote. It's
Right.
Exactly.
Whether it's a motion to approve, or a motion to deny, or a motion to remove the item. I can have some of those saved already in there, but if you do something different than what's recommended, it'll just take me a minute, and then you guys will see it on your iPad, and it'll, you'll be able to check yay or nay. Or
Which I think I'm getting ready to show you. Let's see.
abstain.
Okay.
Yes, no, or abstain.
So here's voting on the agenda item. As soon as the clerk starts the voting on an agenda item, so after you've made your motions and your second, done your motions, she's going to populate it so you can start voting. The voting panel appears in I Legislate. If you've been marked absent, you will not see the voting panel, but that's not going to be a problem because she's going to, if you're in your chair, she's going to mark you present. So in order to vote, you tap yes, no, or abstain. This is what the screen will look like once you've done your vote. God bless you. Once you've done your vote, this is what your screen will look like. And the public can see it and you can see it. So you'll see that the motion failed or passed. How many people said yes, how many people said no, how many people abstained.
Okay, so what about that discussion piece? Are people allowed to vote before we even discuss? You know how we got a motion, a second, discussion,
No,
vote?
before she does that, y'all can do your discussion. So it'll be just like a normal meeting. It's just it'll be more run by us where on the computer. You'll still do your normal thing, your normal voting, discussion, motion, all of that's the same. It's just we're putting it in differently and you're viewing it differently. And the public will be able to see it clearly. So this is another training resource. I've listed it on your PowerPoint and presentation that you have. I've also listed the one that we just did, the initial one up there for you to review. Yes, there's going to be questions. I've got a few of my own, and we'll work through them. We just kind of wanted to give you an overview of what we've been working on for the last little while and trying to make things better for everybody, including the public. Melissa, how's things going with the live? No?
It's almost like our live manager is not speaking with our legislate, so we're gonna have to get with Granicus and Caleb to see if they can tell us, why they're not communicating with each
So-
other. But once that happens, you will be able to see the vote button pop up. You'll be able to vote, and then it'll populate on the screen as well.
So once they communicate better with Granicus, because this is our first live meeting that we've done with Granicus, or attempted with Granicus. Other than that, we've done all through training and what they've done on their side. So once we have worked that out with Granicus, if you guys would like to come and sit with us, I can leave the meeting live, and we can walk through it together, each of us, individually, or two at a time, but no more than two at a time. So just let us know. Anybody got any questions that I might be able to answer right now?
I do. So Melissa, when you said it's gonna pop up on the screen, when we raise our hands, the public can see us do that. Is that vote gonna pop up here?
It will.
So, okay.
It may not pop up say here, but when it's on the recording, when they're watching it on our recording, the live broadcast, it's gonna pop up in the corner.
Okay.
And it's gonna show who made the motion, who seconded the motion, and then it'll show who voted.
Okay. Okay.
But it'll all populate real neatly at the bottom.
And that'll stay for the playback as well?
Yep. And just like here, except here they don't show, like right here they've got peak drafter, which is because it's the test. That's her name. So that showed you who made the no.
Okay. I see.
It'll show you who made the yeses, who made the nos, who abstained. So you'll be able to see, you'll be able to actually see it.
Okay.
Okay? And then there'll be no question of, hey, I forgot to raise my hand, or I raised it late, or I couldn't see if somebody raised your hand. So it'll make it easier on everybody, I think.
A little bit of growing pains, but we'll work through that.
Yes, we will.
Yes, new technology.
All right.
This
Thank
is
you guys
really
for,
good. This is a step up from voting from Zoom, because Zoom is very familiar. The only difference is similar. The only difference is you get to see the person's name here. Whereas when you're electronically voting with Zoom, you don't get to see the person who abstained.
thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, that's it.
I guess we should thank you.
It'll be okay, Mr. Aycock, I promise.
I got you back.
I like this very much. Don't forget how to do it.
Just gotta click the button and it's right. You gotta click right. Or when you bring it in here now.
You want these back?
Sir, I can hold yours back if you want me to. I'll put yours in your office if you want me to.
If you want to put them on. What happens if you forget your iPad? What? You won't be able to vote.
Well, how do we know that's, what if that's not charged when we get it?
Well, it is charged.
I guess we just gotta keep up with that, right?
And I'll put your charger in your office. Okay?
Thank you, Mama.
That's right.
Budget update? Yeah, like, it's a good time.
9:50.
We're gonna recess till 9:50. our guest has finally arrived. And so now we're here, and we're going to start on the Internet Impact Grant Campaign.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank everyone for allowing us to be here to allow us to tell our story. We've got a great story to tell. It's fun to tell a story when you've been winning, so if you've been losing, it makes it hard sometimes, but we've been winning. But we need to finish this thing up, so that's why we're here today. So I'm David Perry. Goldsboro Builder Supply Company is my day job, my paying job. This is my volunteer, one of my volunteer efforts. I've been on the WCDA board going on my 7th year. I was chairman of the board last year, and I'm chairing the campaign this year. So thank you all for having us. I'm going to introduce our campaign director, Annette Medlin, and she's, of course, everybody's got a turn of speaking here. And then our chairman this year is Bob Corniggi with Tri-County Electric.
Okay, bear with me.
Yep, I'm up. You're right. We're tagging on this, so thank you for your patience. So all of our campaigns, I work for Conversion Nonprofit Solutions, so we've been retained by the WCDA to facilitate the campaign. And all of our campaigns start with a feasibility study. And I met with 34 different individuals, business leaders, community leaders in October of last year to gather feedback and to test some of the outcomes that were being presented and the ultimate budget for the campaign. So the result of the study was that there was great support for the work that the WCDA is already doing and equal support for the new 5-year plan that's being put forward for the next 5 years. So this is the third capital campaign that Convergent has conducted for the WCDA. So we know the community really well. This is an incredibly committed business and public commitment in this community for the work of the WCDA, and we're delighted to be back on board to conduct this new campaign. David's going to talk to you a little bit about, it is your turn. David's going to talk to you a little bit about some of the accomplishments that we've seen over the last 5 years. Thank you.
So if I was sitting in your seat trying to make an investment decision, which is basically where I see you guys are, I'd want to know what's our return going to be, what's our investment going to return to us. So here you can see a list of, and I've got a list here because I can read this better than I can see it up there. But basically, so you'll see specifically that we've announced 543 new jobs. Now this is 2015 through 2020, so for the last 5 years. So we've created 543 new jobs, 110 million in capital investment. And you'll see about, well, yours aren't highlighted, but several of these are in the city limits. So specifically to you guys, this is how you would benefit, and this would be your return on your investment. So we completed a 50,000 square foot shell building on Lot 8 in the Park East Industrial Park. Of course, that's going to create increased property taxes. We don't have an official announcement. We have a tremendous amount of interest in that building. I'm very confident we'll have that building. Bob, I'm not going to speak too much, but we feel good about it. We feel good that we're going to have a new industry in that building really soon. And I'm a firm believer of a spec building because what I have found, because I served on a committee of 100, which was the same effort years ago, so I've probably been doing economic development for 15 years or so. And what I learned was, if you don't have a spec building, you don't get industry to come to your community and consider your community to bring in jobs here. And so, they might not buy that building, but they may buy another building or they may buy some property while they're here. If you don't have a building, a lot of times they will not come. It's almost like if you have your house and you don't put it on multiple listings, chances are you'll have a lot less chance of selling it. So it's an investment, of course, up front, but the former spec building we did that we sold was sold to AAR. If you guys may recall, that building was purchased by them, and I don't recall the number of jobs they estimated. It was somewhere like 125 jobs, and it was about a 50,000 square foot building. They bought the building, they doubled the size of the building, and they doubled the staff. So they doubled the number of jobs that they committed when they came here. So I mean, we consider that a win. And with this spec building we have now, same thing's going to apply, I think. We also, we've advanced and sent bids on the Goldsboro Business Campus. which is a new industrial park. It's a new concept. It's over on Town Road, not too far from my business, right beside TA Lovin and across the street from Seeger's Fence Company. And so we've partnered with the Bryan family. We got a grant from the state to put in a tremendous amount of the infrastructure. But the concept is really unique because we actually thought we were going to do a similar park as what we have at Park East, but that was kind of more of the same. But we wanted to be ahead of the curve because as we push through that park, it takes so long to get them, you got to move forward and have them ready. So anyway, we went down to Bladen County and we saw this, it's called an incubator park. I'd never seen anything like it. And I don't, if any of you guys have been to Bladen County, you would prefer to live in Wayne County much more than Bladen County, in my opinion. But they've had tremendous success down there. And they build, 10,000 or 20,000 square foot buildings, and they subdivide them into small spaces, like 5,000 feet. And they're startup businesses. They go in there, they might have 2 or 3 employees. They have success. Then they move up to a 10,000 square foot building, and they might have 15 employees. And then they moved up into a 20,000 to 50 employees. So it's a little different. It's a different concept of economic development. But there's nothing like it in the East other than Bladen County. So we think that's going to be a really good asset for us to help us recruit more industry. And it's all about jobs. This is ultimately what we're here for, is about creating jobs for our folks. We successfully recruited Michael Aram, which is the company that purchased the old XL Lindy plant. You guys may be familiar with that. That was a vacant plant that we helped recruit and get here, and he's done some tremendous things out there. I'm going to touch on one other thing, a side note here at the end. Successfully located Stromberg Foods in the former Sunburst site and facility, which is out on Highway 70, if you recall where that is. Assisted Atlantic Casualty Insurance with a Park East expansion. So Atlantic Casualty is the former Strickland Insurance, you may remember. They sold the company to auto owners based out of Michigan. And their business was growing pretty dramatically. I don't know if you know the Strickland family, but they're great folks. And they had a decision to make. They had a decision whether they were going to move to Michigan, move all their operations. Of course, with remote and technology now, you can do that. Or they were going to stay in Wayne County and expand. So we got involved, and we got them some help. We helped them with some infrastructure in the park, and they agreed to stay. And they've doubled the size of the building. It's under construction right now, so I'm not sure how many employees. I think that's adding, gosh, Bob, do you remember? 116? 116 additional employees.
No, 83. 116 from my way.
Okay, so basically we went from that gain to could have lost the entire company. All the jobs would have been gone. So that's just another effort of what the WCDA and what we do. We assisted Alta Foods. You guys may know Don Barnes is in the tortilla business. He bought a building over on Industry Court, and that's been a tremendous success story. And also, we assisted Tactical Scorpion Gear relocation, which went into the former Sportsman's World facility over on James. Thank you. James Street. So anyway, of all these accomplishments up here, 50% of them are in the city limits. So there's the value you guys are getting, hopefully, for supporting our effort. When I first joined economic development, I thought that economic development was only a win when you looked on the front of the paper and you saw a new industry had come to our community and it was X amount of jobs. Well, what I took about 2 years to really figure out was it's more important of helping our existing industries grow and keeping them here in Goldsboro. So we found that in the city, 75% of the new jobs have come from existing industry, folks that are already here. 61% from new. Well, that doesn't compute.
So that's of the total new jobs from existing business.
75.
75% of those were in the city limits.
Oh, okay, 61% of the new ones.
That you're seeing listed up here. And then of like Michael Aram, and of the new industries,
61.
1% of those were.
I got you. Okay, because my math's not good. I went to East Carolina, but 75 and 61 is not 100. Okay, excellent. And then 35% of the investment, which is a total of $28 million in the city limits. And finally, one point I wanted to make on Michael Aram, and this, I don't know how much this has happened. This is just one I'm aware of. So this is the gentleman who bought the XL Lindy plant. brings his plant here, hires employees. He just invested downtown. He bought the former Will Sullivan building, if you guys know where that is, and he is renovating that now, hopefully to put a food court downstairs and an apartment upstairs. So here's a guy from New York who now is investing in our downtown in the city of Goldsboro, over and above just his investment in his company. So it's kind of a sidebar benefit of having, you know, industry come here.
Thank you, David. My name is Bob Carnegie, and I serve as chair of the Wayne County Development Alliance, and I'm also chair of the Impact Wayne Committee, and I'm your representative as the private side investors to the WCDA and the economic development activities here in Wayne County. And I work at Tri-County Electric as manager of member services. And I want to talk to you just a little bit about return on investment for the city of Goldsboro. As David alluded to, Michael Abram, they have 116 new jobs, 5.7 million in capital investment, has expanded into additional buildings and here in downtown Goldsboro. As he talked about, Atlantic Casualty expanding in Park East. They're going up right now. 83 jobs and more than $11 million in capital investment. And you look at the Maxwell Center. The Impact Wayne raised $1.3 million in 2015 for the center. It's attracted 800 events, and at the first 18 months, the new convention center hotel will expand its potential as significant destination venue. And so you can see what's going on in economic development in our region. And when I look at this economic activity, I see some correlation between the city of Goldsboro and Tri-County Electric. And you may say, how can that be a rural electric cooperative and a city? How can there be some synergies together? Well, electric cooperatives across North Carolina, there's 26 electric cooperatives that mainly serve rural areas. Electric cooperatives are focused on providing a reliable electricity at a reasonable cost to our members, but we also work in economic development. Many cooperatives around the state that are our size and larger have an economic developer in-house that's working daily on economic development in their service area. Tri-County and our board looked at that, and you're looking at probably a couple $100,000 cost to the cooperative to do that. Not saying that wouldn't be a good investment, but we saw how Tri-County could partner with the Wayne County Development Alliance and get that job done at a fraction of that cost. And I see the same parallel with the city of Goldsboro. You could hire your in-house economic developer. Some cities do, the size of Goldsboro and larger. But you're looking at a $200,000+ investment. So I see how the city of Goldsboro, who has partnered with the Wayne County Development Alliance and get the job done for economic development activity in Goldsboro and Wayne County, because the way we look at it at Tri-County, if an industry comes to our area, even though we may not serve that industry with electricity, we see it as a benefit to our community with the benefit of jobs for our members, benefit of quality of life issues and people to have good paying jobs. So those are some correlations I just wanted to share with you that I saw between Tri-County and the city of Goldsboro. And moving on to looking at the Impact Wayne plan, and our initiative one is product development. And a lot of people say, you've got to have product with any industry. With any industry, you've got to have a product. And some people say, well, what are you talking about product with economic development? What I mean by product, you've got to have a building, or you've got to have a site, or you've got to have an industrial park to get this job done, because a lot of times when businesses are looking to expand or to grow into an area, they want, a lot of times when that decision is made, they're ready to go. They're ready to come in and set root. And they don't have time to build a building or go out and look for property. And that's one of our main initiatives is product development. We provide space needed to attract new business and remain competitive, because believe me, businesses that are looking to expand in an area, they may see potential here, but if you don't have the product for them, they're going to go on to the next county or the next state. So that's what we are focused on. That's what we're laser focused on with the Shell building out at Park East. And there's activity weekly and daily of people looking at that building. It's a great building. If you have not seen it, go out there in the backside beyond Strickland and Atlantic Casualty and look at that building. It's a great building. And our initiative 2, business development and marketing. The goal is to strengthen recruitment and external marketing, creating the greatest opportunity for attracting prospects to Wayne County. Initiative 3, business retention and expansion. To work with existing industry, assisting in their success and resulting growth in jobs and investment here in Wayne County. And our initiative 4, investor relations and development. The goal is to maintain a line of communication with investors and to keep them connected and engaged with the success of the Impact Wayne plan. And that's just sort of just a little scenario of the return on investment and our plan here for the Wayne County Development Alliance. Thank you for, yes, sir.
If you go back to slide, please. I think it was initiative 2. As far as the marketing, do you have a percentage of the jobs or recruitment that these jobs provide to Wayne County citizens? I mean, we're creating a lot of jobs, but do you have like a percentage of how many jobs are actually going to citizens of Wayne County and leaving tax dollars within our city? Right.
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can certainly get that for you because that's a great question. Because, you know, a lot of industry, you know, obviously all the employees are not going to come from the city of Goldsboro or the county of Wayne. So that's a good point. I'll check into that and I'll get that back to you.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
So to talk a little more about your return on your investment, you'll see here we have 27 active buildings or sites on our website that are in the city limits. Park East, Goldsboro Business Campus, Graves Drives, Gold Triangle. Economic development staff is working on behalf of the city through marketing available building sites to prospective industry, working with prospects, fundraising, and grant writing, which, as we all know, grant writing is an art. We changed our philosophy last year, and you know, as the climate had changed in economic development, everything is expedited quickly, everything's an emergency, a crisis. You've got to really be prepared. You don't have time to prepare. So we went also, we needed more resources. So we've gone to a regional approach, and this is a change. And at first I wasn't 100%, I didn't understand it. Once I understood it, I supported it. But basically, Mark Pope, who was our Wayne County economic developer, has now gone to, he works out of the, in Kinston, Transpark, thank you, Transpark, but he actually represents Wayne County, Lenoir County, and Greene County. We have our same staff that we had before, doing the same, basically the same jobs. They just don't have a presence, physical presence here. Of course, with technology and all that, you know, it does. But anyway, it's all about scale. It's all about getting the resources. Kind of like Wayne Memorial Hospital is now joined forces with UNC Health. Same concept, same principle. You get the scale of the larger, which makes you stronger individually. So we're very optimistic that's going to be successful. We're continuing to monitor it and measure it with metrics and make sure that we are, but we feel very good about that change. But it's all about, so for economic development, I believe you have to have land available, likely in an industrial park, which we have. You have to have a building. We have a brand new spec building, and we have 20-some buildings available for sale. And very important, we hadn't talked about this, but workforce development is very crucial. Industries are not going to come here if they don't have qualified folks in our community to work in their plants. So we have worked very hard and collaborated with Dr. Thomas Walker at Wayne Community College. He's geared some of the curriculum and some of the classes there for the needs of industry. So when an industry's looking, that's what they look for, and they got a quick list, and they got to do it fast, and you got to be ready. And so that is really the WCDA. These monies would allow us to act fast and be in a position to have success, to have industries come to this market.
mentioned the study earlier, and during the study, we tested some numbers, and this is where we landed. So the goal is to target 700 new jobs over the 5-year period of the new plan, and $150 million in capital investment by 2025. And so those 700 primary jobs that are being targeted ultimately create 370 secondary jobs. Our team at Convergent in the Outcomes Lab runs an economic impact, basically, on these jobs that are being targeted to see what we could project over the next 5 years as a result of recruiting those 700 new jobs. So the ultimate result of the 5-year projection would be 1,070 new jobs, $22.6 million in annual consumer expenditures. I did not include it in your packet, but I did leave behind some materials. So you've got the details of what that projected consumer spending looks like, and that's going to include property taxes and local sales tax and retail and all of those sorts of purchases, the vast majority of which would be within the Goldsboro city limits. And because we can easily pull figures on financial institutions, we're able to tell that story, that it would be approximately $45.9 million in deposits to local financial institutions. So we landed on a goal of what my slides are not reading very well for you all today. There's stuff that's not coming through, so I apologize for that. So the goal over the next 5 years is, and the goal for the Impact Wing campaign is $1.5 million. I do want to emphasize that David just mentioned the new regional collaboration, but it's important to understand that the money being raised through Impact Wayne is for Wayne County. So those numbers, that doesn't read very well either, but you have the slides in your packet. So the money being raised through the campaign is exclusively for work being done here in Wayne County. The budget that I presented to you has a line item in there. Again, this is not reading very well, so you'll have to refer back, and I can resend those, Octavius, if I need to. That there is a line item specifically to point out that the county, even, for clarification within this new regional concept that we're learning to understand, that the county's commitment is actually a little bit greater than it has been in the past. So the county's commitment is on a separate line item there for 1.25 over the 5-year period. So when you combine that with what we're raising through the campaign, you're looking at a total of 2.75 for economic development in Wayne County over the next 5 years. In 2015, our campaign, we did 2 campaigns in tandem during that fundraising phase because we ended up doing the fundraising for the Maxwell Center. So in that campaign, we raised $1.5 million for the Maxwell Center, and we raised $1.1 million for economic development. So that was a large campaign. Of course, the Maxwell Center has had a significant impact here in Goldsboro, and is once we get past this COVID bubble that we're in, then that will come back online and produce even greater results. So a 36% increase for the campaign goal for economic development for this is a really reasonable goal to anticipate for this fundraising cycle. You, as Bob mentioned, I think really important to emphasize too, and there actually is still a physical office here in Wayne County, and the existing industry business, the boots on the ground visiting with existing industry and working on expansions, which you saw earlier, is really significant here, has had a really significant impact here in Goldsboro. Will continue to be here in Wayne County and continuing that work here, as well as some of the administrative staff. So the campaign itself is, campaigns are always in 2 phases. You have a quiet phase where we're doing things like this, getting out and about and talking to folks and sharing the fact that we're in this phase. And then we'll go public with the campaign about the beginning of April. And so what I'm doing is these kinds of meetings, getting people on board and committed so that when we go public, you can already see that the community is really invested in this initiative and that they believe in the work that's being done and and that they are investing in the campaign. This also requires significant leadership to step up. David is, of course, my chair, and he's doing a great job. You've got a list of folks there that are doing this work with him. What we're asking, the request that's being made for the city of Goldsboro. So in 2010, in that campaign phase, you made a commitment of $375,000 for the 5-year period. In 2015, your commitment was $125,000, so $25,000 a year for the 5-year period. So the committee this time is requesting a consideration from the city of Goldsboro for $50,000 a year over the 5-year period for a total of $250,000 for this 5-year campaign. David, did you want to elaborate on the leadership and on any of those things? And we can certainly entertain questions.
Absolutely. I always like to get up and talk about good folks. So, you know, for the folks that you guys, I guess some folks are listening and not here, possibly. Is that correct, Tim? Are people listening to this?
You have the public that can hear this.
Okay, awesome. So I'm just going to mention it because they can't see these slides. So this is our folks that have endorsed this campaign. Our Mayor Chuck Allen, Jack Best, Joe Doherty, Bill Bryan with Mount Olive Pickle, Kenny Touton, the Mayor of Mount Olive, Sam Hunter, T.A. Loving Company, Dr. Thomas Walker, Wayne Community College, and Gray Morgan with Southern Bank. That's our honorary cabinets. Our division chairs, Neil Benton with BB&T/Truist Bank, Bobby Fry, Mount Olive Pickle, Kent Warren, Jackson Builders, Rick Sumner, Wooten Development Company, Bob Logan, Wayne Realty and Insurance, and Gary Smithwick, Turner Equipment. You know, all these folks see the value of the WCDA and what we provide. And I'm looking at this list, and I'm pretty 100% sure all these folks at some point in time have volunteered their time and talents to help with the efforts as well as stroking the check when that was necessary. So I appreciate all of those guys endorsing this and supporting us. And in closing, I just want to say, you know, why I think this is important. You know, I'm from Goldsboro, and I've seen the ebbs and the flows of Goldsboro. I've lived here my whole life. And so, you know, it's all about jobs. You know, if people grow, communities grow, and people live where there are jobs. If we don't have jobs, young people will not move here, young people will not stay here, they will leave. So that's why I'm passionate about it. Thank you.
Say one more comment about the WCDA. As my career and job at Tri-County, we actually serve 7 counties. It's mainly Wayne. Wayne is our largest service area. We're located in Wayne County over in Dudley. But we actually touch 7. And when I see what other counties are doing in economic development, I don't believe people really understand what a gem we have here in Wayne County in economic development. Most counties have a county-ran economic developer that works for the county, and there's no public input. There is public input, but there's no public investment. Well, Wayne County, 11 years ago, embarked on this public-private partnership with the committees of 100s around the county to come together with the county to form this public-private partnership that I know you're aware of, but I just wanted to highlight that people all across this state will call our leadership and want to know, how did you do that? Chuck was involved in it early on, and other people around the county were involved, and how they did this 12 years ago, that you got all these territorial people that were doing their things in their own bubble to come together to do the good for the greater good. So we have a gem here in Wayne County with this public-private partnership that's incredible. And I just want everybody to know, we're talking about this regionalism, which I'm a big believer in regionalism, but I want you to know that Wayne County Development Alliance is laser focused on Wayne County. Even though we're in this regional concept now, we are laser focused. We're not really doing anything different than we've done for the last 12 years. Mark Pope is our president. We are focused on Wayne County. Every investment penny from private side is going to focus on Wayne County. It's going to stay in Wayne County, and it's going to be focused on Wayne County. I just wanted to express that. We're excited about this regional concept with the GTP. And when you look at the 3 counties we're involved in with Lenore, Greene, and Wayne, I think we're in a good position going forward in economic development. And sometimes, you know, when you look at what you've done in the past, you look forward to do things a little different, to partner, just like we're asking you to partner, and we're partnered with GTP, and there's some exciting announcements that are coming over there that's going to benefit Wayne County. So we are super excited about this new opportunity we have, and we look forward to working with the city of Goldsboro to move our community forward and to help our citizens. And thank you for letting us be here today. And if you have any questions, we're here. We'll be here as long as you'd like, and I'll find out. I've texted our people to find out that question. I hope you get it before I leave.
Thanks so much.
One more little budget clarification too, is that you saw that separate line item for the.
Excuse me, ma'am, speaking of.
I am so sorry. I'm so used to being extemporaneous. Just one budget clarification is that you saw that separate line item for the county, but the city of Goldsboro and the other townships are included in the 1.5 million. So I have a meeting with the town of Mount Olive and others to have this same conversation with those folks so that they are part of this process as well. Did you have other questions for any of us?
Anybody got any questions?
I have one. If you could go back to the slide where you laid out the economic development issue, the initiatives, how the money laid out.
That one?
This slide here. I don't know if you have that.
Oh, the budget? Here you go.
So the 250,000, who else from Wayne County, if the city gives 50,000 per year, who else is included in that annual budget number? As in the county and...
So that was the clarification, and I should have gone back to the slide. So the 1.5 million is the total budget for the whole campaign, for the private, but that is also private and public. So that, I'm having meetings with the other townships, and so the city of Goldsboro is included in that. So town of Mount Olive, Fremont, all of those folks would be included in the 1.5.
And the Wayne County government itself, right?
Wayne County government is a separate line item.
Okay.
So I put that in there to show that that Wayne County is committed in their own, separate from the campaign. So they're not included in the campaign. That's their commitment shown separately there in that second line, 250. So Wayne County is committed to at least 250,000 a year for the 5-year period. Is that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, we thank y'all for what y'all do. Y'all do a lot of good stuff for us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for your time and for your leadership here at this table. Oh, I did leave behind some things too, so.
Thank you, Annette.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
All right, Downtown Development Department organized the next presentation from the North Carolina Department of Commerce. That's at 11. Melissa, do you know if they're out there ready? We asked them to be a little early.
Scott's out there.
Can you call Scott in?
Yeah. I'll do anything we can to get finished.
Good morning, team.
How are y'all?
Great.
We're nearing the end of our day, so that's good. I just dropped this.
Aaron, if you could remove your mask when speaking,
Oh, yes,
we'll
I'm
hear
sorry.
you clearer. Thank you.
I don't need this clicker, but it just came apart, so somebody might want to fix it. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Welcome, Councilmember Jones. Good to have you. I'm Erin Fonseca, Downtown Development Director, and this is Scott Satterfield, our Business and Property Development Specialist. I am privileged to introduce our next guest, a highly respected and admired economic and community development professional, Mr. Kenny Flowers. Mr. Flowers, who now serves as Assistant Secretary for Rural Economic Development at NC Commerce, has been a friend and advisor to the City of Goldsboro and our downtown development program for more than a decade. From his first term at NC Commerce as the Director of Rural Economic Development to his next role as Assistant Vice Chancellor for Community and Regional Development at ECU. While in his role, Mr. Flowers was invited to serve as project leader of a forward-thinking community planning initiative called G2T2, or Greater Goldsboro Think Tank. He jokes that no other community has convinced him to have weekly meetings in their community, but at the end of the day, he believed in the goal and the purpose of this group, to predict and prepare for challenges in an evolving community. This group's efforts undoubtedly played a role in the progress that followed, including the city's commitment to the first phase of Streetscape, which then led to unprecedented public investment from federal and state funding sources. In fact, since 2013, $12 million of city funding has been leveraged to attract $39 million in private, state, and federal investment in downtown. $22 million of that being from private dollars, and then at least $14 million more are underway currently. While this progress has taken place in the downtown area, we realize that the benefits of economic development in the heart of our city are reaped by the community as a whole. No one understands this concept better than Mr. Flowers. In his current role with NC Commerce, Kenny leads a team of specialists to help communities prepare and invest in projects that attract and spur economic growth. He will share the value of his team's contributions today, as well as the role NC Main Street, our state accrediting downtown development body, plays in community and economic development. Is Mr. Flowers on the call?
I'm here.
Hey, Kenny.
Hey, Aaron, thank you so much, and certainly thank you for having me and asking me to join today. As Aaron mentioned to everybody, I have a unique history with Goldsboro, having spent 8.5 years at ECU, and I think I may have spent 5 of those years in Goldsboro doing something. There's wonderful partnerships there and a great opportunity to get to know your city and Wayne County. So I'm excited about it and glad to be a part of the conversation today. I want to start by saying, first of all, most of you have probably heard that we have a new Secretary of the Department of Commerce, Secretary Michelle Sanders, who was formerly at the Department of Administration, is now our Commerce Secretary. We couldn't be more excited. She brings to the table a lot of knowledge and innovation. She's a product of rural North Carolina, being from Belhaven, and has really focused on trying to ensure that we lead with rural in mind, with elevating all of our communities in mind. So she wanted me to give you greetings and looks forward to coming out and sharing some time with you as well. We know that there's been significant investments throughout the years in Wayne County and Goldsboro from the Department of Commerce and in partnership with you, and we certainly would like to continue that. You know, I believe really that our communities are sacred. It's an important part of who we are, and building strong communities are a big part of what we do at the Department of Commerce. Our Rural Economic Development Division, which is my house, if you will, is our house together, really focuses on building those strong partnerships with rural communities. And that means a lot to me. You know, I'm a boy from rural North Carolina as well, grew up in Wadesboro down in Anson County. And so all of this is special. I saw the connection growing up and how important it is to have strong profiles throughout our state, our rural communities, our urban communities working together to ensure that we have the strongest profile overall for the state of North Carolina. So I thank you on the front end for the work that you do, and certainly will say as we move through this conversation today, think about ways that we can continue to partner and elevate our partnership. I want to start my conversation, and Brad, I'm not sure if I'll be controlling the screen with the slides or you'll control them, and I'll just let you know when to go to the next one. How will we do that?
This is Melissa, the city clerk. We can do it either way. You let us know which one you prefer.
Okay, I'll just say next slide and we'll go from there. But, right, gotcha. But I wanted to start by just acknowledging what I think is the best compilation of economic development professionals, rural development professionals anywhere, and that's our team at the Rural Economic Development Division. They really are a committed bunch that is strong and focused on building partnerships with our communities across the state, but obviously focused on rural. So as we advance the commerce mission, our goal is to really build those strong bridges to rural North Carolina that help with prosperity and ensure that we have those relationships with that make a difference. And we believe that's important work, and I believe that these are super important times for North Carolina and North Carolina's rural communities. It would have been anyway, but I think the pandemic environment we're working around and in now certainly has exacerbated all the issues that many of us have dealt with. So it's super important. So I want to report that I've been super pleased with the high level of dialogue between communities at the state level, with strong leadership from our legislative leaders, with directives and initiatives that support rural prosperity and also recovery from the pandemic. Governor Cooper and his strong commitment to rural prosperity, as you saw in the most two recent budgets that he released, had very strong, robust rural development packages included that could make a difference in rural North Carolina, especially now in this pandemic environment. And his Hometown Strong initiative that really has galvanized state government agencies around economic development, rural prosperity, and that's super important so that we can identify and align and leverage and invest in our communities together to make a difference. Because I truly believe that when we do that, we certainly have a chance to move the needle on a number of key and critical rural issues around this state, issues that impact rural development and economic development. Issues like infrastructure, that's a known commodity that we need. It's the lifeblood of economic development. But broadband, especially now in this pandemic environment, understanding how important it is to education and telehealth and all the things that we are doing differently as a result of the pandemic. Housing and neighborhood revitalization. How important is it that we increase our housing stock everywhere in North Carolina, but especially in our rural communities? We really need that to advance competitiveness and economic development. And also an issue that I think is critical to our communities, especially our small rural towns with very small staffs and resources, and that's an issue of local government capacity. And we think about that comprehensively, understanding that if communities can't deliver public services at a base level for their citizens, you can't be competitive for economic development realistically. You just can't do it. So local government capacity, in as much as handling day-to-day administration and management issues, that is so important that communities like Goldsboro and some of our stronger, larger communities might take for granted, but understanding how important it is are really struggles for some of our small towns across North Carolina. And then general readiness for economic development and investments that make these communities strong. So positioning those communities for that growth, that development, creating that foundation is a big part of what we do at our Rural Economic Development Division. And I'll talk a bit about that right now. We really do advance our programming with a very simple but yet complex mission in mind, and that's to engage, enhance, and help transform rural North Carolina, helping to increase competitiveness that I just mentioned so that communities can have an opportunity to compete and build stronger regions with collaboration, helping to increase capacity so that communities can deliver those public services and handle those responsibilities that allow them to be functional and increase efficiency. And then the broader theme of just finding ways to engage and invest that help to enhance the overall competitive profile and increase the quality of life in our communities. So we build our programs like that and really advance them and evaluate them in a way that allows us to see how we are doing in these three areas. Next slide. So at the Rural Division, we have 5 baseline programs that really help guide what we do and help us make these investments in communities to try and allow us to help build some capacity, address issues of infrastructure and others. A nice mix of state and federal programming, many that you will be familiar with, that allow us to leverage these pieces together in support of communities like Goldsboro and others across this state to make a difference. Our Community Development Block Grant Program that has been around for forever, and many of you are familiar, Goldsboro has been very active in this area of programming even since I've been at Commerce, but provides grants that supports economic development, building renovation and reuse, infrastructure, and then neighborhood revitalization and housing. really focusing on leveraging resources in those communities that impact low and moderate income families as well. Our state rural grant programs, that is another program that has a strong commitment to building infrastructure in North Carolina, funded by the General Assembly on an annual appropriation, offers grant opportunities for building reuse as well as general infrastructure and building demolition. Wonderful opportunities for communities across the state to make investments that support economic development and community development. Our building reuse program under this umbrella is probably our most popular program, really addressing a number of issues in rural communities that help them position businesses and industries to grow that are already in the communities and to attract new ones. Appalachian Regional Commission is not relevant in the East. It's obviously focused on the Appalachian region with similar programs for infrastructure, workforce development, and leadership, but certainly an important program out there. Our industrial development.
Could you hold on a second, sir? We got a little bit of background feed here.
Okay, thank you.
What is that noise? Where's it coming from?
IT's working on it.
What'd she say?
I think the speakers are giving us some background feed that makes it hard to hear right now, at least for me.
Is it coming from my end?
I think it's our end, just
Okay.
a second for us.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
You got a hold of IT and listen?
Yes, Brad's.
Are we waiting on him?
Such a no-my.
There they go.
Can you try again, sir? Mr. Flowers, can you try again?
Okay. Sound better?
Yes, sir.
Much better.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
I think I was at our Industrial Development Fund utility account. That's a program that really focuses on infrastructure projects that are publicly owned in communities across the state. Tier 1 and Tier 2 are eligible here. And it really does, although it's general infrastructure and publicly owned infrastructure, we place a high priority in this area on building product for local governments, building product that supports economic development like industrial sites and building space. We really do emphasize industrial site development investments here because we think that in the short term, this is one of the biggest boosts that we can give rural communities, helping them position themselves and to be ready when those opportunities occur. I think Mark Pope and the folks at the Alliance will definitely say amen to this one, that if you have those pieces in place when the businesses are looking in, you certainly have an advantage, and many of our rural communities need some support here, so we place a high emphasis on that. And then our Main Street Rural Planning Program, and this is the Connect to DGDC, a national program that really provides outstanding partnership, guidance, education programs to support our main streets and downtown development organizations. Goldsboro has a jewel in DGDC. We certainly work with them a lot and really impressed with the work that you're doing together as a city and as a community there. We believe we have one of the strongest Main Street programs in the state with some wonderful opportunities to leverage those very important downtown districts in our communities, which I think is especially important in our rural areas. And then our Rural Planning Center that's a part of that, supporting local planning efforts at the regional level. We have a rural planner that's stationed in each of the state's 8 prosperity zones that work very closely with communities, especially those small towns that don't have planning departments and really need a boost as it relates to capacity, providing support, strategic planning, economic development plans, business development plans, support again for downtown. So all of those pieces that we think are super important to building a strong foundation for economic development success, we try and cover through this program. Next slide. And I'll just stop here for a second. This is just really our strategic priorities as an agency, or as a division, as we advance our program, and really wanting to help build a strong ecosystem for prosperity, fostering job growth and capital investment. Any Department of Commerce on earth is going to have that as day one, job one, and we just think we need to double down in our rural communities as it relates to that, because we can't miss opportunities. And we believe that's the space we operate in best, is helping to make that connection. So again, we'll build that foundation and communities will be ready. Enhancing local capacity. I talked about local government capacity earlier, so I won't touch that again. Just super important to our small towns. And then really prioritizing engagement and collaboration. I heard the tail end of the previous presentation, and they mentioned collaboration and working together regionally. And that is so important to economic development success and building strong communities, which is our focus. We have wonderful investment and engagement programs independently, but we can't leverage and can't have the higher level impacts that we need to have if we're truly talking about or trying to be transformative. We can't reach those goals if we don't leverage, align, and invest together with our partners. Next slide. And this is just a quick peek at the statewide impacts that we're having. These numbers haven't been completely updated. You'll see the dotted points represent projects we have all across the state, and we have a few highlighted. But over the last 2 years, we've awarded more than $210 million in grants to rural communities across the state, which is significant in terms of their ability to address critical issues and position themselves for economic development success. So we're always excited about that, always looking for new ways to partner, and always looking for ways to invest in your community. Next slide. And just want to talk about, how we see economic development and
Mr.
how
Flowers,
we believe.
could you hold on a second, sir?
Yes, sir. All right.
Whether or not there was any of those on the previous slide, any of those were taking place in our community here in Goldsboro, Wayne County.
Was that a question? I couldn't hear that.
Yes, sir. On that previous slide there, where you highlighted the grant projects and those things
Right.
being awarded, the mayor had asked if any of those were being done or taking place here in Wayne County or Goldsboro. We didn't see a highlight on the map, I don't believe.
Well, if it's not close enough, it's certainly there. We've had, and I will share after this presentation with you a kind of a listing of the investments we have there. But we've had multiple projects that we've awarded grants to in Goldsboro and in Wayne County specifically. Proud partners there. I won't try and start listing them off the top of my head, but I will share that. But you guys have been a great partner and certainly been some investments there.
Thank you.
So again, wanted to talk about kind of the general approach we take to economic development, because we think it's super important. Mark Pope and the folks at the Alliance do an outstanding job partnering with our agency and others and kind of advancing the thought of economic development and finding ways to not miss investments and opportunities for Wayne County and the region. So we're excited about that. But we also believe that, we really need to, from our standpoint, build super strong competitive communities if we want to have kind of the best opportunity to be successful and have the highest level of impacts as it relates to economic development. We take a comprehensive approach, and we believe that building strong communities will allow us to be at our best and have an opportunity to not miss those opportunities and grow in a way that supports prosperity. And there's a number of variables, if you will, that allow us to do that I think make communities strong and give them a chance to have their best opportunities to compete. One of those, and we just talked about our Main Street program in DGDC, is really having strong and vibrant downtowns. I personally believe that in our rural communities especially, our downtown districts are probably the most critical and important asset that we have in terms of leveraging it in support of economic development, community development, and building a sense of place. I've been so pleased to see, as I moved across the state, wonderful growth and movement in downtowns being revitalized in a way that make them a critical economic development asset for those communities. I think especially in this recovery period, and going through this pandemic environment, it's even more important because when we think about the importance of small businesses and how they've been impacted through the pandemic and how that's impacted our downtown district and our local governments and ability to function, we need to make a concerted effort to ensure that we don't miss opportunities, that we create an ecosystem and a foundation for communities to thrive. And I really think it starts with our downtowns. As we move back into what might be normal next time, I think we'll see more investment as it relates to small business to ensure that we can, again, create those partnerships that allow us to be most competitive. Second is connected government and business communities. I believe that our local governments are the heart and soul of our communities for sure, delivering public services at a high level and building those bridges that create a sense of place and create a strong community. And having those conversations and understandings and partnerships with depth with our business community is an important cornerstone of a solid economic development foundation and building a competitive profile, understanding what the community needs are by the businesses and understanding what the business needs are by local governments and government leaders really allows us to build those type of partnerships so that we can advance in a way and maximize our economic development opportunities. I think the best way to keep a business or an industry in your town and in your community is to have a continual dialogue, understand what their needs are, build those relationships so when it's time to grow and time to add on, they want to do it in that community, those communities. And those relationships make a significant difference in whether or not businesses and communities can get to that point where business, industry, and families want to stay a part of your community. So those relationships are super important. Being resilient, I think that is, a double down area right now, going through the pandemic and as we recover, really finding innovative ways to make sure that we do have that solid foundation for success in taking the next step forward. Creating some innovative approaches to things that we do now, understanding how we might have to change our approaches to be responsive to families, to be responsive as it relates to public health, to be responsive as it relates to retaining and attracting new business, and again, supporting small business. So finding ways to do that. We have a new program at our agency within our division called the Community Economic Recovery and Resiliency Initiative, where our planning team will work with town leaders to build a resiliency plan so that we can have these pieces in place as we move through the recovery part of the pandemic, understanding what the critical issues are, how they've been impacted, and what we need to do moving forward to make sure, again, that we don't miss opportunities and that we're stronger on the other side of this current environment. Connected communities, to me, this really is how we build the strongest communities, having all corridors, all corners of our community connected and a part of what we're doing, understanding that our brand may be one thing and that brand may be great, but is that brand inclusive as it relates to our focus on all the areas of our city? It's not just the downtown, it's not just the neighborhoods around downtown, it's not just the suburban areas, all of the pieces fitting together so that we can have the strongest profile. And again, building those relationships like we talked about between government and business, understanding, having those same connections to our communities, our community leaders, having a voice, all the voices all around the city, all around the county, to make sure that we have that connectivity and having a strong and vibrant and competitive community, I think is grounded in those understandings and those partnerships. You'll hear me talk about partnership and engagement a lot. Nobody appreciates our investment programs, our grants, our financial support more than I do. But I think the engagement piece, the partnership, the collaboration is even more important as it relates to building strong communities and connected communities across this state. Strengthen and revitalize neighborhoods, always a critical issue when business and industry and families are looking to you and deciding whether or not they want to be a part of your community and drop anchor and invest there. They're looking at all of these things, but they're certainly looking at neighborhoods. We have a crisis, I think, in North Carolina, specifically in our rural areas as it relates to housing availability housing that can really address issues at every level. Affordable housing, and I don't just mean low income when I say affordable. I mean workforce housing so that nurses and firemen and teachers can live in the same communities that they work in an affordable way. Neighborhoods that have access to green space and recreational opportunities for kids so that we can have exercise. Neighborhoods that are in close proximity to food and nutrition opportunities and not in an environment that we would call a food desert, or creating an environment where we're probably building more opportunities for folks to miss out on having nutritious meals and access to nutritious meals. It's very important, I believe, and it really is, one of those things that gets missed in the broader complex sometimes when we talk about community development and economic development, but it's one that we can't afford to, because as I said earlier, I think as it relates to our rural communities especially, the housing issue is one that's critical, and I think we're at a point of crisis as it relates to that in our neighborhoods. Strong infrastructure, again, we can't take step one without strong infrastructure all across our state as it relates to economic development. Our communities are dependent on that. Our programming is grounded in infrastructure. You heard me talk about them earlier. In each corner of our programming, there's some investment or opportunities for investment in infrastructure. So it's important that communities have those pieces in place so that we don't miss those opportunities. Broadband is a layer on infrastructure now that is super important. We talk about all of the things that changed as a result of the pandemic, and there's no question that having access, being able to utilize strong broadband to strengthen our communities is important. One of the good things that I believe, or not a good thing, but it's a silver lining, if you will, as a result of this pandemic, one of the silver linings is, I think, a higher level conversation about extending and expanding access of broadband to our rural communities and other communities that are underserved. It's not just rural, it's communities all across the state, and it's super important so that we can have a competitive environment for economic development, also an equitable environment as it relates to education and access to health. Being focused forward, I always like to mention, opportunities where we can see the great things that we're doing in communities, and Goldsboro is a good example of that. Many across the state, how we built so much. You see the development in your downtown district. You heard the opportunities and growth and investment as it relates to economic development in a previous presentation. So good things are happening, and the importance, as we see it, the important part of that is to really capture and build a vision forward as we're having those successes. Economic development is a super long game. It's one that, it looks for years sometimes and nothing is moving and nothing is happening. But as we put those pieces into place, as we build that infrastructure, as we create those relationships and that connectivity and collaboration, we position ourselves for that success. And as we do it, it's important that we have an eye on the future. What are the future goals? How do we get there? How do we leverage the successes that we're having now in support of more investments and prosperity moving forward? So I have no doubt that that's something that you guys are on top of, but it's certainly a big part of having viable, competitive, and strong communities. And then finally, being engaged and inclusive. I think it speaks back to an earlier point I made about connected communities, but I think it deserves a separate tab, if you will, in light of our current pandemic environment and issues that we've dealt with over the past year. I think I've gained a better understanding of how important it is to be intentional in reaching out within partnerships, within communities, within our state, to make sure that every corner is engaged and has an opportunity to be considered in decisions that we're making. That builds a stronger profile. That paints the real picture of our community. And it allows us to have that forward focus in a way that can position us to be more successful and more impactful. Having impacts on every community in your city, in your county, in this state is important. We recently had a meeting of our downtown development directors back in October, I think late September, October, and had a wonderful slate of presentations and conversations that we're going to have with our 150 or more Main Street directors across the state, downtown developers across the state. And as we got closer to the meeting date, we had a flurry of outreach from the downtown development directors asking us, urging us to include some components on diversity, engagement, and inclusiveness. And I thought that was a major message on how our times have impacted how we see things and things we need to do. We had a couple of presentations, and I had a general conversation with all of the directors to just chat and see what those issues were and how it impacted what we were doing. And one thing that one of the planners said, or one of the development directors said, was that she was proud to say that her community had a very strong brand. They had worked hard to get it. Everybody knows their brand. They know what that brand is and what it's focused on. She said, but she was very ashamed to say that that brand was built without much input from anybody other than a small group of folks in leadership. And she said, we need to go back and make that different. We need to be intentional about being inclusive and understanding that what we do is impacting our entire communities, and we're a stronger community when we have that conversation and have that engagement. And I thought that was an amazing point. I think it really does kind of speak to where we are now and how important that is. So it's a big part of what we do. It will be a big part of what the department is doing under Secretary Sanders. She has made that very clear that we want to be inclusive, we want to be connected, we want to leverage our assets to support and highlight rural communities and find new ways to invest in them, and all these things are important. So with that, I'd love to take questions or have a general conversation with you, and I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Who has the first question?
Mr. Flowers, this is David Ham. You addressed the annual retreat for downtown development last year, and I was present for that. And I will ask you the same question now that I asked last year, and that's your opinion as to the importance of the city of Goldsboro for having an economic development plan itself.
And say that the end part you said, an economic development plan, that kind of faded on the last of your question. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Yes, Kenny, I think
Yeah.
Councilmember Ham was asking the importance of the city having an economic development plan citywide. Is that correct?
Yes, citywide, not just downtown, but citywide.
I think that is super important. I've been a part of many of those, and I think when we get a true assessment of what the broader needs of the community is, that's how we get there. Our planners are part of those processes all across the state on a daily basis. And what we see is those communities that have a design plan, ensuring that you can touch on those pieces that are critical to you, ensuring that you can leverage all of the assets that are available to the community is important. And that's what I think is most important. A lot of times when we start developing strategic plans, economic development plans, downtown development plans, I think we focus on the front end too much on our weaknesses maybe. How do we strengthen this? I really believe that identifying key assets that you have all across the city and leveraging those, ensuring that you're working towards ways to leverage those is important. And you get that with a strong plan. You start with those assets, you identify what your weaknesses and opportunities are for sure, but a broad and comprehensive community-wide plan is certainly important. And I would endorse that anytime.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Anybody else got any questions, comments?
I've got one, if it's all right, sir.
For who?
For Mr. Flowers. Since you endorsed that, Mr. Flowers, any recommendations on how to get that? Does your department assist with that, or is it a private contractor?
I mean, you can do it either way. We certainly are available to provide some assistance. whether it's creating a general conversation, helping to guide the process with facilitation, and even working with you to build that plan out. So we would be happy to have that conversation, see what you need, and see how we can help you get there.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
I have a few questions. Kenny, can you give us some examples of how other communities are leveraging their assets and their staff to approach economic development?
Certainly, and there's some truly creative approaches around the state. I get excited when I see, innovative, collaboratives that advance community and economic development visions, if you will. One of my favorite I went to Carolina, by the way, so one of my favorite cities on earth is Chapel Hill. I'm biased, but one of the things that they've done that I think is a very good approach is to kind of take a dual approach, if you will, to economic development and downtown development, so that, as I said, I believe downtowns are one of your most critical assets, and to leverage those in support of economic development is smart to do when you've done that. But they have kind of a joint approach where they have a city economic developer that focuses on the broader city and its connections to economic development and advancing that vision there. But then their downtown development director, Main Street development director, serves as the economic development voice for the downtown district. So they work very closely together to, as we talked about earlier, identify what those critical assets are to make sure that they leverage them at a very high level and move that forward with their planning. So I think that's a good approach and very creative. Another approach that I like and have been impressed with is up 301 from you in Wilson. They made a concerted effort to focus on, a critical asset in their downtown district and leverage it in support of building a strong economic development profile. And that was the Whirligig Park, to kind of use that as the focal point for investments and opportunities. And they've developed around that. It's grown in popularity. They've developed around that. They use that as part of their brand. And over the past couple of years, I think it is, they've seen more than $67 million in investment in downtown Wilson. And there's also investment around there with some job growth and opportunities. But a new hotel that's being renovated in downtown, as well as some other development that really allows you to see how that vision is moving forward, and understanding that, the importance of focus forward as they built their plans was very, very critical. And certainly, as I said, it's something that I smile about when I see those. So a lot of different approaches. That's two that kind of have built on existing assets and created some partnerships that have supported growth and prosperity.
Thank you, Kenny. You mentioned a couple of different communities that you've collaborated with, and I know that you collaborate with several communities across the state. Why do you think that Goldsboro has seen success in the last decade? What would you attribute that to?
Well, I really do, and I have as I said, a bias from my previous relationship with Goldsboro as well, but I also had a perch to see, again, we talk about that long game, to see that there was a visioning process, kind of vision in place to really leverage some things that you're at your disposal. A wonderful, streetscape to kind of build on, to build your downtown. A wonderful opportunity to connect, as it relates to creating a priority for the government and being engaged in economic development. I remember having some conversations with Congressman Butterfield's office when they were going through the first round of the Tiger Grant to try and get some investment there, and it ended up working out being a critical piece of Goldsboro taking those steps forward. So that investment, that commitment to being, in the long game, identifying those assets, seeing it grow, and sticking with that vision. I'm sure, and I wasn't there, on a daily basis, but I'm sure there were many times where you couldn't see that growth enough to maybe make you wonder, whether or not, the vision was right, that the goals were right. You can make, enough movement to make a difference, and you stuck with it and made a difference, and that's a tribute to the leadership there. And again, as you talk about building a citywide plan for the future, I think that's also just kind of underscores how important keeping, that type vision and a commitment to that type vision alive. And that's how it happens. It's easy to get sidetracked. It's easy to not see the growth. It's easy to not realize it's a long game and to back away. And that's what our communities lose. And it takes strong leadership. And again, fortunately in Goldsboro, you guys have done a great job in that.
Under your category, this is Councilman Polak. Under your category for strengthening and revitalizing neighborhoods, I heard you mention affordable housing for firemen, police, nurses, et cetera. I was afforded the opportunity to purchase my house when I was a fireman. I'm guessing what my question would be is if you were to look at the statistics or the percentages of rental affordable housing versus ownership affordable housing, because I see under your title, Rural North Carolina, you speak of prosperous and prosperity, and I want to leave a legacy and be able for families to be able to leave a legacy or an inheritance. So what percentage would you say of ownership as opposed to rental affordable housing under that category?
And I'll say this, and I appreciate the question. And I think about our neighborhood revitalization program at Commerce. We have some grant funds that through our CDBG program that can provide support to housing developments, to create rental units, and obviously units to purchase. We love it when we see projects that have opportunities for home ownership. I'd be afraid to toss you out a percentage. I'd just be kind of off the top of my head. But I know that most of the things that we're doing is a pretty significant gap in terms of the number of rental properties that we're supporting versus potential for home ownership. We would love to see that change, but I think the best news that we have, the best thing that we see is this creating opportunities for homes to be, for families to get in homes either way. I think that from a state standpoint, there needs to be a broad and comprehensive investment in housing. You talk about that legacy. That's super important, and we love to see that too. But I'll be real honest in terms of the numbers that we see. Vast majority are building units that are rental units with some wonderful investments in neighborhoods that do provide the opportunity for home ownership as well.
Thank you for that. And I'll kind of piggyback off of that question. As you're probably aware, our streetscape now extends past our commercial core. As we consider preparing, marketing that area for residential development, and then we also look at tying in our decade-old neighborhood plan, can you share some wisdom with us about how we can tie the commercial core together with residential development in a respectful and meaningful way?
Yeah, I think the best wisdom is that would be an amazing approach to connecting that in a way that really, I think, leverages what you have in the city. That connectivity is important. I'm a firm believer in, we say mixed use when we're doing downtown development. I think that is one of the cornerstones of creating livable, vibrant downtown districts. And the thing that is missed so many times is having that connectivity to the surrounding neighborhoods. When we talk about having vibrant communities, when we talk about having the best profiles for economic development, it has to be connected. Those neighborhoods deserve, to me, and I'm not speaking to Goldsboro specifically, but I'm thinking about some communities that we work with. There are neighborhoods that deserve a high level, of oversight, if you will, to help with that development because they've been they've been impacted so negatively and had a negative impact on the community. Let's just leave it like that. But I think that those neighborhoods deserve a focused kind of vision from cities and towns to kind of make sure that, one, they are rebuilt, that they are assets to the community, and that they are a connected part of the overall visioning plan. So having that connectivity is important. Goldsboro, again, would be, I think, would be in a situation where you're really leveraging those assets together if that's all tied together.
Any other questions?
Anybody else got any questions? Did you get mine answered?
said you were going to answer it at the end. That's what I thought.
I think the question was about what kinds of grants had been put to use in our community. I can think of a few off the top of my head. I'm sure there have been more because a lot of them predate my time. But while I have been here, we did help the Goldsboro Pediatric Dental Office on South Center Street get a building reuse grant to the tune of about $200,000 that they were able to put into reusing and rehabbing a vacant historic property. They created 40 jobs from that, so that's substantial, and my son loves going there too. We've also had a $100,000 Main Street Solutions grant that brought the Arts Council downtown, and then we established a revolving fund through the Main Street Revolving Fund that we've been able to support, I believe, 3 businesses with downtown so far. That revolving fund is being replenished, so it'll be made available for awarding pretty soon.
How much is in that?
Well, the total is $100,000. I believe it's up to $60,000, but Randy can answer that question better than I can.
60,000 available?
Mm-hmm. Right. All right, Kenny, well, thank you so much for your time. Your team at NC Commerce really adds tremendous values to communities like ours, and I hope that we remember what they are available and capable to do when we start thinking about economic development planning citywide, and taking advantage of the opportunities that they afford us. So, thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and then I will circle back with kind of a full list of the investments we made there. But appreciate that answer, Aaron, and it certainly has been a pleasure to be with you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Aaron and Scott. So we have Catherine Gwynn, the finance director, will give us an update on the budget status. Do you want to take a break for 5, or do you want to move right in?
Look, I mean, that's good.
Okay, Catherine, you out there?
Catherine?
Hurry up, well, no, that's.
Mice is causing the issue. Let me let Brad know that we're hearing some humming.
And I'm not sure when you have to stand for that.
We got to see if we can go back down with that volume.
Melissa, are we ready to go? Okay. Good morning, Mayor, Council, staff, and citizens. We appreciate the opportunity to come today to give you this update. First, I want to thank all the city staff for their hard work because the information I'm presenting to you would not be possible without them and what they do every day. I'd also like to thank the finance staff for their tireless work. They're the ones that are responsible for processing and churning all of these hundreds of thousands of transactions so that we can present this data to you today. I'd like to introduce with me today Ms. Andrea Thompson. She's our Deputy Finance Officer. She has an MBA and a bachelor's in accounting. She has 25 years plus in state and local government finance and accounting experience. And she's been here about 2 years, just like I have. And then also I have with me, stand up please, this is Kelly May. She's our accountant. This is filling the position that the council authorized back in March of last year. Kelly's been with us about 6 months. She has an MBA and a bachelor's in accounting, and she's been strictly in state and local government for about 7 years, and she actually came to us from the Local Government Commission. So we're so pleased to have her with us. I am continually encouraging her to sit for the CPA exam, so we will have another CPA on staff. I think that'd be great for the city of Goldsboro, but we enjoy having her. She's a wonderful help to us. We also have coming with us next Wednesday the procurement and warehouse manager position that the city council authorized us during the budget process. He comes to us with more than 25 years of purchasing and warehouse experience strictly in local government. And he also has the Certified Local Government Purchasing Officer certification, which is intense. It's very difficult to get, and he actually has his lifetime certification. So we are really excited about welcoming him aboard as well. And I'd like to welcome aboard Councilmember Jones. Pleasure to have you here with us. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to take kind of a historical look. The purpose of what I'm doing today is to give you an update on our historical collections and expenditures. We're going to talk a little bit about project budgets, and we're going to talk about fund balance. Because when we come together in our budget work session the next time, we're going to be looking forward. We're going to be talking about the upcoming budget. So what my purpose here today is to talk to you about where we are. Most of my perspective is a 6-month perspective. It's a good cutoff time because it's 6 months. That's about 50% of the budget year.
6 months back or 6 months forward?
6 months back. So we're going to be looking through December 31 of 2019 and 2020, okay? So we're going to look at revenue, we're going to look at expenses, we're going to look at project budgets, and then we're going to look at fund balance as kind of where we are at December 31, okay?
December 31.
December, yes, sir. So you could advance.
2020.
2020, correct. And so first we're going to talk about, now specifically we're talking about operating funds. So general fund, utility funds, stormwater, downtown service district occupancy tax funds. Those are operating funds, not project funds. So you advance, please. So first off, we're going to talk about a comparison looking at the general fund revenue collections December 31, comparing fiscal 21 to fiscal 20. The fiscal 21 through December, we collected $21.2 million general fund. The same time in the previous fiscal year, we had collected $20.9 million. So we're ahead approximately $266,000, which essentially to me is break even when you're talking about $20 million. So we're on pace. And of course, all of you, I don't have to tell you what an impact COVID has had on us. And, you know, in light of the fact too that the city of Goldsboro had gone through Hurricane Matthew, Hurricane Florence, we had major staff transition 2 years ago. So, you know, this to me is reflective that we are steady, and that's what I want you to take away from this. Next slide. So this slide compares, think about fiscal 21 budget. It compares the budget up to what we've collected through December. We had budgeted in the general fund about $42.8 million, and as I said, we've collected 21.2. That's approximately 49.47% of your budget. So what does that tell you? So from my perspective, what it tells me is that we did a pretty decent job estimating what our budget is. Because obviously what you budget in revenue has to equal your expenditures. And typically what you don't want to happen is you don't want your actual spending to outpace the cash that you're bringing in, right? I mean, because we don't want to run in the negative. So for me, when I look at my budget to actual, and I'm looking at December, we're halfway through the year, we're at 49.47%. So that tells me we're on target for collecting what we budgeted at the appropriate time. You also have to remember your property tax, which generally most people, I would say probably in the range of 60 to 75% in general, are going to pay their property tax by December 31. even though we don't have, SALT deductions like we used to on our income tax returns, but most people still traditionally, because they don't want to pay the interest that comes if you miss that deadline in January. So we do have the majority of our property taxes collected, which is the vast majority. Sales taxes and property taxes are your two biggies. As you can see, I have this ranked in, from largest to smallest order, so you can see that. So that we have collected the vast majority of our property taxes at about 72%. Our sales taxes, the reason that shows 25.9%, that has to do with, and I hate to even say these words, accrual basis, and it has to do with timing, because sales tax always comes in about 90 days after when we receive it. So you just have to take my word for it that is on pace. It's on pace with the way that we account for it, because what happens is that 3 months into the new fiscal year, we're actually collecting the prior fiscal years. So we're on track. So that's what I want you to take away from this slide. Next slide, please. So the next biggest fund is our utility fund, and we're comparing fiscal 20 to fiscal 21 actual. And so in our utility fund for fiscal 21 through December, we've collected $9.3 million. And in fiscal 20, we collected $9.7 million, which it's in red. I know it's hard to see on the screen, but that's actually a decrease of $451,000. All right, so the thing that you need to keep in mind is COVID, all right? So the governor stayed our ability to charge penalties, to cut off. We actually, in trying to be respectful and helpful to our customers, we did not institute cutoffs until October 1. The governor allowed us to do it the third week of July. We stayed it because we wanted to make sure that customers had enough time to make a payment arrangement. And so in speaking to that, we lost a lot of, service penalties, things like that. We lost a lot of that revenue, which is part of that reason.
Is that in there, or is that not even in there?
It is. It's in that late payment fee. So you see, we had collected up through December $192,000. We were down to $94,000, and so essentially,
The other half is.
right. So April 1, the governor cut us off, and then we made the decision as staff to hold that off until October 1, and we had. I want to say, I think it was like 800 payment arrangements where people took advantage of the no interest payment, and those expired at the end of January, I believe. We started reinstituting cutoffs, but also bear in mind, if someone came in and they had a HOPE letter or they were getting assistance from Green Lamp, if they had any type of assistance letter or information, they're not on the cutoff list. So
what you can.
Sir, yes, sir, we tried to do what we can. So in the scheme of things, when you think about how much COVID impacted utilities, and I'm not talking about just water and sewer, but I'm talking about electric companies, talk about landlords charging rent, $451,000 out of a budget that's about $20 million is really not that bad. So I feel like we're holding our own, even in light of all the things that we've had to go through. Next slide, please. Yes, sir.
Could you mention real quick the bigger number, the 300, with charges sewer?
Sorry, which number?
I think we talked about the biggest portion of the deficit, the second line.
Yeah, so, you see there's that blip where we have more increase in our water and sewer over the prior year. You have to bear in mind that we changed utility billing systems December of 18. I did not get here until almost February 1st. So there were some anomalies that we had to work through fiscal 19, fiscal 20. And so, the one thing you have to think about, we did a 17.5% rate increase. And you may be wondering, well, why isn't that showing? The part that's difficult here is this is basically on a cash basis. I hate to even say that because it's very confusing. So this is not necessarily what we've billed. We have billed more, but this is what we've collected. So from a cash standpoint, I don't want you to get too upset that you see one number higher in water and then a number lower in sewer. Until we get through getting that new system and getting the kinks worked out of, as Mike had alluded to yesterday when he talked to you, those numbers will level themselves out because we've been in the background double checking calculations and making sure that those things are correct as we're billing them. Okay? Next slide. All right, so this is a look at this year, fiscal 21 through December, of our budget compared to our actual collections. So this is not billings, this is the money that's come in the door. We have about an $18.5 million budget. We've collected $9.3 million, which is a little over 50%, which is where you want to be because utilities are generally very even, so you would expect that you would have billed about 50%. It's not quite like electric where you can have the dips and the valleys depending on how the weather is. So that, I think we are where we need to be. Next slide. So then we're going to cover some of the smaller funds. In stormwater, this is comparing the prior fiscal year to this fiscal year through December. We're only different by $158. That is a very continuous, normal fee, so that's exactly what I expect. That's almost like 0%, so that's right where we need to be.
Do you know if we have any of that projected to spend?
Yes, sir. We actually had reserved about $200,000 that is to be transferred to a capital project. We sat in a meeting here about a month or two ago. The engineering folks were working with the manager's office to decide on what projects they actually wanted to fund. And I told them when they made a decision, I would come back to council and bring the ordinance to establish the project budget for that stormwater capital project fund because it does have very sufficient fund balance. I think.
Have they told you that yet?
Sir?
Have they told
No,
you?
sir. I haven't heard back, but we've been all going in different directions. But as soon as they give me the word, I'm ready. The money is there to fund it, and we probably have about $1 million in fund balance there. So there is money to spend on those types of projects.
We need to spend it.
Yeah, great. Next slide. Okay, so this is a comparison of fiscal 21 now through December. We have a budget of about $1.7 million. We have collected $771,000, which is about 43.28%. Now, the reason that number goes down, as you see with loan proceeds, I have not borrowed the money yet. So I'm hoping that I'm going to get to that before the end of the fiscal year. But the main thing you need to take away is that your outside money that's coming into you from charges, it's $1.5 million. You've collected $771, so we're at 51.44%.
What are the loan proceeds? Where are they coming from?
That was for the street sweeper, I believe. That was the only thing. Yes, sir. The street sweeper, I believe, is the one that's budgeted in the stormwater fund. And it's been encumbered, and they've ordered it. It just has not come in yet. Okay.
So expensive street sweeper.
They are expensive pieces of equipment. They sure are. In the downtown district, this is comparing prior fiscal 20 to 21. In 21, we've collected $60,193. In fiscal 20, we collected $60,565 difference. So to me, that's like zero. We're right on target. And that should be, again, this is solely funded by property taxes, and you get most of your property taxes, like I said, between 60 and 75% before December, so we're right on target. Next slide. This is comparing the current year budget with the actual, and we have a budget in the downtown district fund of $97,000, almost $98,000. We've collected $60,000, and that's about a 61.49% of budget. So we're right on target. Like I said, you get between 60 and 75% before you get to December 31. Next slide, please. So occupancy tax is one of our smaller funds, and I'm sure, as all of you are aware, The hotel industry has hurt in the past year. So this is the one that I'm not saying you should have concern over, you should just understand why it is the way it is. So comparing fiscal 20 to 21, in fiscal 21, we have collected $469,000 roughly. In fiscal 20, we had collected about $616,000. So we're down about $147,000 from where we were the prior year. And I just don't think that's a surprise to anyone because of COVID and the effects that it had on the hotel industry. Next slide, please. And so this compares our budget to our actual, and I think this is where, when you look at our ability to budget revenue, this is where we just did not know. We were trying to be hopeful, with the economy that we have here in Goldsboro. We are a military town. We're a great throughway for traffic going to the beach and to the mountains. But again, COVID hit, and we did actually cut the budgets back in occupancy tax fund. But as you can see, we budgeted almost 1.2 million. We've collected about 470,000. So we're at 39.16% as through December. So, that is a little bit of concern for us, but the thing you need to keep in mind is that the expenses, when we start talking about those, are partially, they're prorated, so we pay a percentage. So we're not in as bad a strait. So you're going to see when I recap all this that we have not overspent ourselves. It is a philosophy that the manager and I both share as far as being conservative about what's coming in and what's going out. So anyway, I just point that out to you. That's the one kind of blip, I think, in our revenue collections that I want to point out to y'all. Next slide. And so the next slide is a comparison of fiscal 20 to 21, and I'm recapping what you just saw by fund. And on the left side, that's current fiscal year, and then the percent of the budget. And then I also gave you the perspective of fiscal 20, the percent of budget, and then the increase, decrease. So this recaps everything that's on the previous slides that you saw, but just in one nice place. And so, like I said, what we're kind of looking for is we want to be around 50%, depending on the fund that we're in. And I think we're there, except for in occupancy tax fund, and we all know why that is. So next slide, please. So now we're going to talk a little bit about expenditures, and then we're going to recap revenue and expenditures together. Next slide. All right, so I did this by fund, and what we're doing is we're looking at fiscal 20 and 21, and we're looking at budget to actual. And I think, the two biggest funds that we deal with, operating funds, of course, general fund and the utility fund. I broke it down by type: personnel, operating, capital debt, and transfers and shared services. Your mind should tell you, if I'm 50% through the year and I pay people every 2 weeks, I should be about 50% of my personnel. And that's basically the trend that you're going to see. If you see it a little bit lower, I would probably say that has a lot to do with what we call lapsed salaries. You have vacancies. So we had positions that it just takes a long time to fill. As you heard Mr. Wagner talk about yesterday, he's had a lot of turnover in his staff, so he's had vacancies. So you are going to see some, they're definitely going to be less than 50%, and that's going to represent some savings when we get to the end of the year, because those will become lapsed salaries. And again, as we discussed, the manager and I have tried to be very conservative. When they've asked us, can they buy something, we've had them on basically a $2,500 cap that they need to ask and just let us know ahead of time so we can make some sort of determination. And I think you can see the results of that when you look here. If you look at operating through fiscal 21, we've spent about 38% of the operating budget. If you look in the prior year, we were at about 45%. And so we have tried, because, when COVID hit us last March, April, May, you know, we knew going into the budget, we were gonna have to be more conservative, and that's what we tried to do. And so I think that does reflect, and it also reflects in the departments listening to us too, and taking us very seriously, because they do take their budgets very seriously, and they care about making sure that they provide all the services and do it at the best possible cost. So, yes, sir.
Help me with the capital one. It's 1,000,009 over here and 2,000,003. Back the year before, it was like 1,000,000 and we spent 53,000. There's something weird about that.
Sorry, I'm trying to see. Are you talking about in the general fund?
Utility fund, I'm sorry.
Utility fund.
Third one down.
Capital 53. Right, well, so there is some equipment that's on order. We've held back on it, so it's not reflected here because we hadn't paid the bill. And so we actually told departments, we really didn't even start letting them spend capital until, oh gosh, probably like late August, September, October. So there are some commitments, but again, this is based on the bills that we've paid and accrued in there as well. So that's why that number's low right now. And so I think when you look overall in the general fund, out of a $42.9 million budget, we've spent about $18.9 million. That's about 44% of the budget. Compared to the prior year, we had spent about 46%. When you look in the utility fund, about $6.7 million spent up to $18.5 million budget. That's about 36% of the operating budget. And in the prior year, we were at 42%. So we really have tried to ramp down the spending. Okay, next slide. And then, of course, you know, I do the same thing with stormwater and downtown district. Obviously, these are a lot smaller budgets. We've spent in stormwater fund about 27% of the $1.7 million budget. And then the other thing I will point out to you guys, we typically structure our debt so that it comes in May. And that's after you've collected all your property taxes, so it's a cash flow mechanism that almost all governments use. So if you go back and you look at these slides and you look at the debt and you say, well, why, gosh, y'all didn't spend, you know, pay your money out in debt. Well, a lot of that is because the lion's share of it happens in May, is when we pay that out. So that's just a little FYI there. In downtown district, they've spent about $13,000 out of a $117,000 budget, about 11%. Again, same trend. You look in stormwater fund, 27% so far, up to 30% the prior year, 11% in downtown district, up to about 16% in the prior year. Next slide. And then we wrap up with occupancy tax fund. They have a $1.2 million budget. They've spent about $240,000, that's about 20%. And if you recall, when we did the revenue slide, I told you we'd collected about 39% of the revenue. So again, you know, we've all tried to be very conservative so that we don't overspend ourselves, okay? Next, sir.
Tell me that again now, what have we done? Well, that is the occupancy tax.
Yes, sir.
Which is the tax that does the
Hotels.
Thing here,
Yes,
right?
sir. Hotels, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you're saying that we spent 86,000?
We've spent $240,000 so far.
Okay, you did the total thing. Okay.
And then we've taken in about 39% of that, of the budgeted amount in collections. So we're not our spending is not outpacing the money that we're collecting.
Well, part of the issue is you probably haven't paid Wayne County yet, right?
There is one of the quarterly payments, because it occurs in January, is not reflected in there, and that's a 40%. We pay 40% of all of our occupancy tax over to Wayne County.
For the Maxwell Center.
Right, that is correct. That's by agreement that's been in place.
What will that be, $40,000, $50,000?
Well, it generally rolls out, it's probably about $70,000 to $80,000 a quarter, roughly.
Right.
Yeah.
$450 a year or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, next slide. So, like I did with the revenue, I'm recapping the expenditures by the funds. So I did an all funds expenditure. So we have about a $64.5 million budget. We've spent about $26 million, which is about 41% of our operating expenditures. Compared to the prior year, it was about 44%. So we, like I said, we've cut our spending back. And then the slide below is the same information, but I just did it by fund. So in the general fund, and all these are recapped on the prior slides before this, the general fund, like I said, about 44% of expenditures have been spent through December, about 36% in the utility fund. Next slide. So now we're going to take both those pieces of data and just put them together in a couple of summary slides. Next slide. Okay. So I recap it by fund, and what I want, again, it's current fiscal years on the left, prior fiscal years on the right through December. And again, in the general fund, it's almost a $43 million budget. We've collected $21.2 million. We've spent out about $18.8 million. So cash-wise, we're ahead about $2.3 million. And again, same percentages, 49% collected, about 44% spent, okay? And then when you look at the prior fiscal year, we were ahead at December about $400,000. And again, I think this comes back to that philosophy of trying to preserve what we can, and then, we'll kind of see how the year goes, and that's been our philosophy, to try to make sure we stay ahead of the curve in case something else happens, because we didn't know if there was going to be another really bad second wave of COVID, so we're trying to be prepared. In the utility fund, again, $18.5 million budget. We've collected about $9.3 million. We've spent about $6.6 million. So incoming 50%, outgoing about 36%. So cash-wise, we're to the good about $2.6 million. Stormwater fund, again, about the same scenario. We're ahead about $289,000, having collected 43% compared to 27% spent. Next slide. Downtown district, we've collected $60,000, we've spent about $13,000, which puts us ahead about $47,000, collected 51% compared to spent of 11%. Occupancy tax, and this is where I want to bring you back. We talked about we weren't at 50% collections, we're at about 39%, but we've only spent about $240,000. And I guess my philosophy with this is if we can break even, like just what we take in, that's all we spend, I think we're doing good, especially considering the COVID, that it has, just terrible impact on the hotel industry. So when we look at all funds together in a $64.5 million budget, we've collected about 49%, we've spent about 41%, so we're ahead about $5.5 million, where in the prior year we were ahead only about $2 million. So again, conservative, trying to watch our money and our spending.
Is there is there validity to that?
In what sense, sir?
In that $5 million, is it really there?
Yeah, because we haven't spent it yet.
Right.
But going forward, as we understand COVID and where we're at and our finances, our revenue, if you will, now we can be a little bit more spend in some of these programs going forward. So
what's wrong with
that's
you?
a consideration. What's that?
What's wrong with you?
What do you mean, what's wrong with me?
Spend more money.
It's not more than you have budgeted. It's within your budget.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
So ideally we have a balanced budget. So we want to try to build our fund balance. You're going to see why you want to try to build your fund balance when we get to the end. So, okay. Next slide. All right, so we're going to change gears just a little bit because we don't talk about project funds when we're in the budget process. So project funds can come about.
Let me start. Do we have project funds?
Oh, you've got a lot of them.
We do?
Yeah, you sure do. We've got a lot. We're going to have fun talking about them. We're not going to spend a lot of time on them. Okay, because
I've never seen them.
they're well, you have. They're self-sustaining, so it's a little bit different. So you just have to remember you have governmental funds and you have proprietary, or sometimes the word enterprise funds. So you think enterprise, money making. I'm supposed to recover my cost and then maybe make a little profit. So when you think about enterprise or proprietary, you're thinking utility fund, stormwater fund, that kind of thing, okay? Right. And then governmental fund is like your general fund, your community development fund, your downtown district, your occupancy tax. All right, any of these, those are what we would call operating funds, which by law, the board is required to do an annual budget ordinance for that takes effect July 1. Well, any of these operating funds is allowed to have what we call a project budget. So something that takes us longer than a year to complete, or it could be restricted by purpose of how the revenue is spent. So, we borrowed money to construct the police and fire complex. We had to put that in a project fund because it took more than a year to complete it, and it was borrowed money, and the people we borrowed the money from, bless you, said you got to account for this by law in a project fund. So what happens is I bring to council project budget ordinances to you. They could be a capital project fund, which would indicate construction, brick and mortar, infrastructure, that type of thing, or special revenue fund like JAG, ballistic vest, community development, CDBG block money, that kind of thing. So go to the next slide. So all of that has to be enacted by ordinance law, which means that council has to do something. And there are, again, two pots. You have the operating funds, which is your July to June 30. They can be governmental, they could be enterprise/proprietary, or you could have project funds which stem from something that happened relating to an operating fund. They're multi-year life, and you have capital project and special revenue funds. But those together really comprise, when you look at your CAFR is going to be made up of both of those types of funds. Now, we're not going to get in the weeds. There's actually two more, but thankfully Goldsboro doesn't have them, so we're not going to have to deal with them. And I don't foresee that you're going to have to. So just think in your mind, these are the two things that encompass when you talk about when you guys spend money, that's what they get encompassed in. What you see from the manager and myself from April through June is the operating. Next slide. Okay, so first I want to just recap for you the governmental type activities, strictly governmental. For example, the council's authorized Herman Park Center at $11.1 million. To date, we've spent $358,000. The police construction, which of course you guys know is complete, $6 million, and we've spent $6 million. We have the street bonds. That was the amount that was taken down in December, I think it was December 2018 before I got here, 4.7. We've spent about $2.7 million. And so that total of those types of governmental project funds is about $23.2 million, and we spent about $9.6 million today. Next slide. Yes, sir.
What was the $358,000 Herman Park Center? What was that spent on?
That's part of the design fees to the company that got awarded the design build contract. Yes, sir. Phase one of that. Yes, sir. Okay. So the next is, the next group that I would call it would be, they're kind of comprised of governmental and enterprise activities alike. The big one, of course, that you know is the Tiger Streetscape that for the most part, it's like 90% complete. They just have to do the GWTA concourse, which is about $600,000. So the commitment, for example, on that was FTA committed $5 million. The city committed right at $1.8 million. And to come up with a $7.5 million contract, we spent about $6.5 million on that.
Now, where is that?
It's the top line.
No, I'm asking, do you know where they're at finishing that?
Well, they've engaged, the council approved the architect. He's been doing design work. They've actually done field studies or whatever they call that. Okay. So we actually have to have this done by June. So we'll wind this up, thank goodness. Community development is another big one, and you just have to remember that community development, that number, because this is a special revenue fund, it is an accumulation of prior year community development entitlement. This is the URP and the ESFRLP. So like the council just approved the $100,000 for the URP at the meeting, I think it was the meeting before last meeting. And so the Housing Finance Agency has continued. They want us to spend the money. And, you know, the qualification was we just won't reimburse you your expenses until you get your audit done. And we all know we're in the final processes of that. The auditors have the financial statements. That's what they're working on right now. So city's done everything it can do. As soon as we get the audit in place, we give it to Housing Finance, they'll start reimbursing us. But we have not ever been stopped from spending the URP, the ESFRLP, or the community development money. So that line, the 4.1 million in community development, is actually accumulation of multiple years of CDBG entitlement, as well as all of those other grants that go along with that.
But is it there to spend?
Yes, sir.
So we can
Sure
spend it
is. The
tomorrow?
appropriation's there and you can spend and continue work, so.
So, and I'm just curious, and I know you don't know who, but why hadn't we spent that already? I mean, is there any decent question?
I think COVID had something to do with it, I do.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's something, Tim, we need to focus on spending.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Got to have the projects right. So
Do what now?
Tiffany Gardens, right?
Okay,
So
where you
$500,000 we
got-
organized against that. We have to wait for that to go forward.
And then what about the 2,600,000?
Right.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
The acronyms?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, ma'am. So that's urgent repair, and that had to do with like Hurricane Matthew, Hurricane Florence, and they would give us blocks of $100,000 at a time, but you have to spend it, and then once you spend it, they'll give you the next 100,000. So that they have given us, an extension, of course, as you know, until June 30th. I just had a conversation with assistant manager I think yesterday. He's getting ready to ask for the RFP so we can go out to bid for those homeowners that were qualified for the URP. The ESFRLP is the Essential Single Family Rehab Program. They're both through housing finance agencies, and those had people that were already pre-qualified for that. So that money comes, like you might have heard Shakole talk about that, like we had like 700 or 750,000. The problem is they won't give you more money until you spend it, because we have not spent the 2018 money. That's why we haven't gotten to really past, I think we're at the 150 now. We won't get the next block of money till we satisfy and complete all those other homeowners, complete them, then they'll give you more money. I have not appropriated I haven't given it to council to appropriate 700,000 to ESFRLP because you hadn't spent the first 150. So we got to spend the first, then we'll come back, and they actually have granted an extension on that until December 31 of this year. And it's possible that they may, grant other extensions. That's really between the manager's office and
We're
community
talking, but you're only talking 150 right
That's
now,
right. That's right.
And then after we get to 150, we can go back, is it another
you more.
150 or is it more?
You've actually got, if I recall correctly, there's 100,000 in the urgent repair program. Randy's working on right now with the RFPs that we could spend out of our own pocket. That's got to be done by June 30th.
That's right.
Right? So,
So if we're gonna do that, we need to do that now.
right. That's why
sorry.
Randy's got the RFPs in work, and then we'll do the work and we can pay for it. If the funds, hopefully the audit's done and the funds are no longer suspended, we can use that money. If for whatever reason the funds are not released, then you could spend your 100,000 internally and get that reimbursed at some point in time.
Well, and also bearing in mind, URP is advance funded. They give you 50%. So we've been holding 50% of Housing Finance Agency's money for way over a year, waiting to spend it. Then when we get done spending our whole 100, then they'll give us the other 50,000. I just had a conversation with Randy yesterday, and he was asking my staff for the bid number so we could go ahead and advertise it, put it on our website, because the preliminary work has already been done, so we're ready to go out for bid on that. I'm not sure about the ESFRLP.
We have until December 31st, as you mentioned, to move forward with assigning that funding, and I think we even have until June 2022 to wrap it up.
Okay.
What you gotta do to build them.
Huh?
I mean, you gotta do the construction.
Yes,
Well, you gotta allow that time.
yes.
Yes.
Well, I don't think you're doing a whole lot of that.
All right, well, we can have a further conversation on it if you want.
Okay.
Okay. You're fine.
You talk about money that we have left over from 2018, and we know that's pre-COVID. So for this particular, do we know why that money was held up and not spent? from 2018?
It's complicated.
Okay.
So they allow you, and I'm by no means a CDBG expert, okay?
Okay.
So they allow you to spend a percentage, I think 20% on admin, okay? And so like that, your con plan that you have, and then the con plan does 5 years, and then your action plan does each individual year. Well, whoever, the CDBG director, has to follow that plan. And I can't tell you without going through the action plan to say, well, what goals got met or did not get met. Andrea, she handles all of the CDBG reimbursements, and she worked very closely with the previous director. And so she worked in tandem with her to tell her, okay, well, you've spent X amount of your admin money, you've only got X left. And then that director actually coded all of the other things. So if, for instance, we spent $150,000 on the WA Foster debt payment, that is allowed. We've got another, I think, year and a piece of a year that we'll be able to use CDBG funds for that. So that's one of those expenses that's sitting in that community development line item. But you can actually look through, because you can't even put it in that system unless it's there in the action plan. So it's a very programmed spending. So to answer your question, to say why didn't we spend it, we would have to look back at the action plan and see what didn't get done. And it could be, I think she was leveraging CDBG money with the ESF-RLP and the URP money. And because things got held off, we didn't get bids out, those processes on that side did not get done in that department for whatever reason, COVID or whatever. That's part of probably why you still have money sitting over there, but you can look at the action plan and tell based on what got spent.
But Brandy, I think what the council needs ought to do is we ought to get that $4 million, we ought to get that $2 million, and we ought to get, what's the $966,000?
We've got that money. That is from Wayne County. That's the coronavirus money, and we've got until December 31 of this year to spend it.
Okay.
The FEMA, that's one that Nona Robbins in my office, she's kind of my jack of all trades. She helps me do special projects. We're still, actually, believe it or not, working on Hurricane Matthew. So we've got Matthew and Florence we're trying to wind up, and as soon as we close that fund out, we actually are going to be able to return money to the general fund and the utility fund, which is going to help their fund balance. We'll talk about that at the very end. So that fund is holding quite a bit of cash right now because we're waiting to finish up with FEMA.
But that's holding up the FEMA money? Is that what you're saying?
We've gotten 75% of the FEMA money. We're still waiting on the 25%, and it's just a lot of paperwork and inspections.
So we're waiting on 25% of 26 million, of 2.6 million.
It's actually, yes. So that's the budget right now.
Okay.
It's complicated because there's some other appropriations that I've got to get done for that, but it at least gives you a perspective of the budget and where we are spent today, because we're done. We've completed all the FEMA projects, okay?
And is the 4.16 million, is that money still there?
That's money that's authorized, and there is a plan to spend it because it goes along with your action plan.
Well, who's looking at the plan?
That would be your community development director.
What's their name?
It used to be Shacole Simpson Carter.
So but we can't just let that go.
And that money carries forward. You're not gonna, ESF, RLP, and URP, you have deadlines on it. The entitlement money, and also remember that you've got another $260,000 that you appropriated back in, I think, November. There's coronavirus money, and my recollection, I believe you got 5 years on it. Other community development entitlement money, it's there. You're not going to lose it. So don't feel like you've got to...
I don't want to not use it either.
Well, no, you need to use it, but it's got to go with the action plan, but you're not going to lose that money. So please don't feel like you will. Okay. All right, and then really just enterprise type activities. You heard Mike Wagner touch on that a little bit yesterday. We've got a lot of sewer rehab, and we've also got some water infrastructure that's also getting done, work at the water plant on the Plate Settlers project. That totals about almost 26 million, and we've spent about 16, almost 17 million. As you heard Marty say, we're almost done with Phase 4 sewer rehab right now. So
What's the Golden Leaf Storm and Sewer Infrastructure Grant? Do you know what that is?
I cannot remember the name of the subdivision, but it was, I can't remember the name of the subdivision off the top of my head.
Can you find that out for me?
Sure can, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
What?
Mm-hmm.
What? Huh?
Tobacco money.
No, that's not what that is.
Well, it's the Golden Leaf Foundation gave a stormwater and sewer infrastructure grant, and it is for infrastructure in a subdivision. I just cannot remember the name of it.
Marty, are you out there?
Well, Marty ain't gonna.
Marty or Bobby, you listening to this?
No.
Okay.
So just to recap, okay, so we've gone down the rabbit hole of project budgets. And just to recap the slides we had before, you know, we have a total of about $90.4 million in project budgets. We've spent about $54 million. This is in addition to your annual operating budget at about $64.5 million. So it's just perspective. I just kind of want you to be aware of it because we don't talk about these things during the annual budget process unless we're having to do a transfer from the operating fund to fund a project. We generally don't talk about these things, so I at least wanted to kind of give you a bird's eye view of that.
Now, are you saying that's in addition to?
That is.
So we got whatever the budget is, which is
65 million. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plus, we still have that.
Got another
Now,
90
is
million.
that spoken for?
Yes.
That's spoken for?
Yes, sir.
And how about the 10 and the 16?
I'm sorry?
How about the 10 million and the 16 million? Are they spoke for too?
All of that money, that's spent. So,
Okay.
so out of the 90.
That's gone.
Yes, that's right. So we.
Well, then take it away. I don't care.
Okay. Next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about fund balance. So that's kind of like, you know, we think about equity. Let's roll to the next slide. So, you know, we come to you when we do operating amendment, and if we don't, we have to present you a balanced budget. So revenue equals expenditures. And if we have a new expenditure that we have to amend the budget for, or if we can't balance the budget, then we have to appropriate fund balance, which is basically taking out of the piggy bank. So this past year in 2021, this is where our appropriations stood. In the general fund, we did about $450,000, but as you see, $434,000 was from purchase order rollovers. So those were commitments at June 30 of 2020. The goods had not been received or the services had not been rendered. And then we rolled it over, and so you appropriate fund balance you took out of the piggy bank in fiscal 21 to pay for the $434 in the general fund.
And we don't ever look and see if they were still good or not.
Most of them, I would say because of the paring down that we've done of PO rollovers, those were all good. Okay. You do have a few, and I think the departments they kind of understand my philosophy on that. And I will say the LGC frowns on rolling PO rollovers over for operational needs. So let's say I roll over $10,000 in office supplies. They frown on that because really what you're doing is you're padding your budget, is what it amounts to. It's not like I was building the play park, a $50,000 play park. I roll that PO over because they hadn't finished building the play park. It's a different scenario. So we had, like I said, 142 in utility fund, 20,000 in downtown district. That had to do with a parking lot. And then occupancy tax was about 156,000. And that's, go ahead, next slide. So that's just.
Go back.
Okay.
Well, so the lighting, is that for the lighting at the ballpark?
The Bryan Multi-Sports Complex, that's correct. That's not the whole payment, but that was just the portion that had to come out of fund balance because we either did that or we would have had to have gone into the travel and tourism budget and cut another $95,000 out of that budget to balance it.
So why didn't you do that?
Sir?
Why didn't you do that?
Well,
Because you all voted to give them more money for spending on advertising.
Do what now?
you all voted to give them even more money on advertising. See that $40,000 line item?
Yeah, but now that nobody, we didn't know about that, the 95,000.
Yeah,
That
it
was in the budget. It was in the
budget.
adopted budget.
Yeah, so you got to pay the lighting bill out at Musco, out at Bryan Multi-Sport Complex. You can take it from general fund, or you can take it from occupancy tax fund. We took it from occupancy tax fund, so we have more money available in the general fund.
And what are we doing, why are we taking money for the air show?
Well, that was budgeted, but it won't be spent,
Okay,
because there's no air show this year.
Advertising, so.
Yep.
all right.
Okay, next slide. So, all right, we're going to talk a little theory, and I apologize ahead of time. All right, so you hear us use that word, fund balance. Fund balance, really, it's in terms of governmental funds. All right, so remember I told you 2 buckets, governmental, enterprise. Fund balance generally refers to current resources. So we talk about like cash and receivables, not long-lived assets like a water plant or a baseball park or a Herman Park or something like that. So when you look at our audit and you look in that section that talks about fund balance, you're going to have different categories. Not all apply to the city of Goldsboro. Non-spendable, the red pie slice, is exactly what it says it is. You cannot spend it. And if you look over here on the excerpt from our actual FY18 financial statement funds, this is actually the general fund portion. Non-spendable has to do with inventories, and perpetual care is the cemetery. Then you get into what we call spendable categories, which are broken down into restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. Restricted, it generally means that they're externally imposed restrictions, meaning not the board. So it could be a grantor, it could be a debt agency because of your debt covenants. There's a calculation called stabilization by state statute that's required, a calculation by law. And these are legally enforceable, and they're restricted by law through constitutional provisions or enabling legislation. So you can't spend it just because you want to. It's got to be spent on the purpose for which it's been restricted.
But like, so you're saying we've got 3,700,000 sitting in the state statute for fire?
No, stabilization by state statute is going to have to do with reserves of like accounts receivable, so it won't let you spend something that you don't have. So we've billed it, but we hadn't collected. So that's one of the things that stabilization by state statute, it's a required calculation by state law. And so what it's essentially trying to keep you from doing is spending your cash below zero.
Well, do we look after that or look at it?
Oh, yeah, sure do. And then the other, for Goldsboro, unexpended bond proceeds, at the time in 18, we had about $1.3 million in unexpended bond proceeds. Now, remember, this is general fund. That's all we're talking about right now, okay? Right. And then in the terms of what is committed, committed takes formal action. So it's a little step down in the sense it's not an external restriction. Committed means the board took some sort of formal action to say, we want to commit X amount of fund balance for whatever, safety in schools or sidewalks or whatever. The city does not have any committed fund balance. There actually is some committed fund balance in the next column, and that has to do with your occupancy tax fund. Assigned is intended to be used for a particular purpose, but it is neither restricted or committed. So you could set aside a pot of money in your fund balance for a particular purpose, but you can change your mind. And it's the same thing with committed. The board, to me, would have to have a resolution to commit fund balance, but it would also have to have a resolution to uncommit it if it wanted to release those funds.
Could we at least see that list?
You have it right here. The only thing in the general fund, there is nothing committed in the general fund as of FY18. Since I've been here, the board has not committed any fund balance for the general fund. There is, everything else is going to be unassigned fund balance.
All right, now I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
Is that money, is that just like is that sitting there as cash?
Mostly because governmental funds tend to focus on current resources, which generally are cash, investments, accounts receivable, things that, they'll be converted within a year is generally that term, so.
So you feel like within a year, we would convert that?
It's you have to think about, that's what your net position is. It's not like on a business balance sheet where you might have cars and trucks and land and things like that, where your equity, your net position is higher. Ours really, our unassigned, that really, you need to think about that. That's pretty much money in the piggy bank, okay? Whether it's restricted, that's money in your piggy bank that you have not assigned to anything, okay? Because it is very current resources.
Can you print that?
Yeah, you should have that in your slide as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, sure do.
I don't know why I can't look at
All
my
right,
slide.
so I'm going to confuse you a little bit more, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize. So we have to also talk about, so we've talked about committed, restricted, assigned, and unassigned. What you guys focus on is what's called available fund balance. So if the LGC, you hear talk of that, well, your fund balance percent is below the 8%, they are talking about available fund balance. So forget the other 6 terms I told you, available fund balance. This is a statutory definition. There's your statute reference if you care to read it. And that's the formula definition of it. And you have to remember available fund balance, the dollar and the percentage is as of June 30. So I can't give you a June 30, 2021 yet because we're not there, okay? And theoretically, if your budget is balanced and you bring in and spend, you're break even, right? You haven't increased your fund balance or decreased it. So remember that the LGC has recommended 8%, which is 1 month, and they say that's a minimum. The city has a policy of a 10% floor and a 15% ideal, and if it falls below the 10%, I believe the policy says within 36 months the council has to adopt some formal action to bring it back into place. So 10% is kind of that bottom floor. 8%, it makes the LGC write you all a letter, essentially.
Where are we at today?
Next slide.
I guess I'll just find out.
So, where we are, my ballpark estimate for 19 is going to be about 19.67%. 20 is about 12.44%. And we're going to talk about how we got from 19 to 12. We're going to talk about that in the next couple slides. I'm going to do the best I can to explain, but it's complicated. I mean, I can't sugarcoat that any other way. It's just complicated. So as of fiscal 18, we had about 7.96 million in available fund balance, and we had a 20.71% fund balance percent. Minimum is 8, our floor is 10, our ideal is 15, okay? The graph basically depicts where the fund balance is. The green line on the very top, those are your peers. The LGC publishes memos that you all can go out and look at to your heart's content. It's cash and fund balance. It talks about property tax collection percentages, cash, fund balance. And our peer group is actually from 10,000 to 49,999. And I will tell you, and I sat down with the manager, we were looking at this the other day, our peers, most of their average fund balance is somewhere in the range of, maybe like 8 to 10, 11 million, somewhere in that range. So we're not that far off from what our peers are.
What's that 52%?
Well, okay, that's a little complicated too. Part of what happened, the best that I can tell, was 2015. Some bond proceeds were accounted for in the general fund. I typically do not do that. I try to pull out all of my project budgets. I try to pull them out as project budgets, because what happens is you get an artificial inflation like this in your fund balance percentage. And so you do this number, hills and valleys. And so if you took out that very large amount of restricted bond proceeds, it kind of puts you back in that range of that 20-something%. But I will tell you, if you go pull the memo, just like I did, that it's at 50-some%. But that's the why part, the best that I can tell. And without doing more research and spending more time on it, that's kind of what the answer is. Okay. So our peers are above us. You can see the blue line that goes up and down, that's Goldsboro. The red line at the very bottom is the 8%, the orange line is 10, and then the green line is your 15% ideal. And as I said, the 19 and 20 numbers are my estimate. And let me also say, available fund balance is nowhere in your CAFR, okay? So don't go looking for it, it's not there. That is strictly an LGC statutory thing, and it's in those memos that they publish on the Secretary of State's website. So just wanted to point that out. If you're trying to find it in the CAFR, it's not there. Next slide. Yes, ma'am.
Where, do you mind going back one? Where would you like to see us in percentage from your expertise?
She's the wrong person to answer.
I am too conservative. That's your problem. It's going to be with me. I'm too conservative to answer that question.
But I'm still interested. I understand where you're coming from.
Well, I will tell you now, my last job, I worked for a municipality with an electric system. They tend to have higher fund balances. When I left that job, I had over 40% fund balance, and I was able to build it. Now, we had to build it up to that point, but we had good working capital. I mean, $36 million in the bank, 40% fund balance. But that's not necessarily always the best thing for the city because, you've got to spend it in time for your constituents too. So I'm not the best person to ask for that. Okay? Good? Okay. So we're going to talk about just general fund balance changes between 18 and 21. In fiscal 19, what I have is going to be about a $1.8 million decrease in fund balance. FY 20 is about a $3.7 million increase, and obviously this fiscal year is to be determined. And what I'm going to do on the next 3 slides is try to explain to you how that happened. How did you, with a balanced budget, how did you go to 1.8 million in the red or 3.7 million? And I will tell you, the vast majority of it comes from appropriating fund balance. Really big chunk in fiscal 19 is about 1.8 million in PO rollovers, which we've talked about it. And if you can look at that line, 1.799 in fiscal 19, 1.5 million in 20, and then 434,000 in 21. So we're trying to stem that, and that's that whole thing about culture and philosophy, things of that nature. So we're trying to cut that down.
Okay, and you're gonna get us that list?
Yeah, I'll give it to you. Yeah, it's in the agenda. Yeah, you're more than welcome to it.
All right.
And then really in fiscal 19, how we get down to appropriated fund balance of 4.8 million, that there were a lot, I should say this, there were several error corrections that I was taking care of. And these were prior year things that had happened. The one biggie, I think, is really like the grant matches, the 1.5 million. We had to do 2 big appropriations. One was for part of it was part of our $1.8 million Tiger grant match. We had to do a portion of that. And then you also had Hurricane Florence that we had to appropriate the money to transfer it to the Special Revenue Fund for FEMA Florence to be able to fund those expenditures. So that money, the money in the FEMA Florence will come back to us at a point in time. And then when you look at fiscal 20, we appropriated about $3.5 million in fund balance. And again, the big part of that was Tiger match is in that $726,000. You had about a $1.5 million in PO rollovers, which is prior year expenditures. And then there were 2 prior year debt corrections that I had to make that tallied up to about $1.2 million. So I mean, it takes a chunk out of your fund balance. And of course, you all have seen, we talked about the 450 that we did for this fiscal year. Next slide.
Well, why is go back.
Go ahead.
Why is the debt service correction for prior years and the HVAC, why are they both in there for last year? I'm just curious. I know the HVAC was the police department, right?
And those were prior years. So what happens is, because of the way it was accounted for in prior years, I hesitate to use the word, but the profit, if you will, from the taking the debt, the revenue from the debt, it had occurred in prior years. What should have happened is it should have been moved into a project budget, so it went away from the general fund. So when it was time and they had to spend the money for the HVAC, it had to come from someplace. Well, it was sitting in the fund balance in the general fund, and it goes back to what you asked me about the 53% of the debt. That's why. It's sitting in your fund balance. But that's why if you do it through project budgets, you take it away and you keep your fund balance more level and smooth. Does that help? Okay. All right, next slide. All right, so then there's two other explanations about why your fund balance goes down. It's revenue shortfalls, or it's expenditure, over-expending your expenditure budget, okay? So for revenue shortfalls, what we ended up with 19, big thing is we had several, again, because this stuff had been done in the general fund and not in a project budget, there was money appropriated in revenue in the tune of about $900,000 or so, well, no, it was actually about $1.5 million in grants that it just didn't come to fruition. We actually, in that year, had a utility franchise tax surplus that helped offset it, so our revenue shortfalls were only about, it was about $1.4 million, so that was money we expected to come in that did not. In fiscal 20, the big issue there is I did not have time to do debt funding. I particularly like to do debt funding in 2-year cycles because it's extremely expensive to do. And so if you're going to borrow $1 million or $2 million, the cost is the same. So from your standpoint, that revenue will come back in, hopefully I can get it done this fiscal year, and then it will replenish your fund balance. So where we looked at on that screen that had the chart on it, like 12.4, with the debt funding for just fiscal 20 coming back, as well as FEMA reimbursement, we'll be back over 15%. So we'll be over our ideal target at that point. Next slide. And then the other would be expenditures. And actually, when you look at 19 and 20, over what got budgeted and what got spent, the negatives are actually surpluses, they're lapsed, which means that the departments had more money to spend, but they actually spent in 19, $4.8 million, and then in 20, almost $2.8 million less than what they got budgeted. So I say all this to recap at the bottom. When you look at that net increase or decrease in fund balance for fiscal 19 and fiscal 20, really what it is when we appropriate fund balance. That's why it's just, I don't bring fund balance appropriations to you lightly. I mean, I do try to consider what the consequences are, but that's one reason why we try to be so careful with appropriating fund balances. But as you see, and I've shown you, the trend is we're cutting that back and we're being very conservative with that. Next slide. All right, so utility fund, I use the word fund balance changes. It is not the same thing, okay? It's net position, because utility fund is an enterprise fund or proprietary fund. It's on a full accrual basis. It's not on modified accrual like your governmental funds. So it is a little bit more difficult concept, and you asked this question yesterday when Mr. Wagner was up here. It is a more difficult thing, and I tried to tackle this in 2 slides yesterday afternoon, and so I say all of that is that when we look at the operating results in fiscal 19 and fiscal 20, in fiscal 19 it's going to be about a $3.5 million decrease, and then in fiscal 20 we're actually about break even at a positive $287,000. So I do the same thing where I try to explain to you part of it. The vast majority of why that fund balance is going down is because of appropriated fund balance. The one big thing that happened in 2019, and it was an error that had occurred sometime in 18, there was, It was given as a rollover of $2.7 million for AMI. It was debt proceeds. Well, the debt proceeds had come in the prior year, so you can't double count it. So what ends up happening is it is an appropriation of fund balance. That, with the PO rollovers, is the lion's share of the $5.383 million that got appropriated in fiscal 19.
Okay, and what happened there is they should have never gone back and coded those things
Right.
to that number.
And if I had done it, it would have been in its own project. It would have been pulled out and apart, so it wouldn't have gotten counted. So you didn't think you had it already in the prior, and that's what happens. It's a timing difference. So just kind of keep that in mind as well, because then what happened is, actually in fiscal 19, they finished spending the money, and they spent to put the AMI system so the bills got paid. So that's why you end up with that $3.5 million loss. And then, in fiscal 20, there was only the appropriation of fund balance for PO rollovers of $3.2 million. And then in fiscal 21, $142,000 in fund balance was appropriated for PO rollovers. Next slide. Okay, so then we look, again, you can't do it in the same manner. So like when we talked about fund balance before, non-spendable, restricted, unrestricted, unassigned, assigned, available, those rules, forget them. We have to look at net position. So if you looked on our fiscal 18 financial statement, the utility funds net position, net equity, if you will, was about $57.7 million. And of that, what we would call unrestricted was about $9 million. And so because I didn't have time to get into the mechanics of the calculation, because that would have been all day, I couldn't represent what I think it's going to be, but essentially just keep it in the back of your minds. You're going to have a net decrease and a net increase between 19 and 20. So your tentative net position at the end of fiscal 20 is about $54.4 million. And then your unrestricted is probably going to be still in that $8 to $9 million range, because most of that money that I talked about for corrections, that was restricted money. It was borrowed, it had debt covenants on it. So I'm sorry I took so long, but I'm done.
No,
Okay.
good presentation.
All right. Any questions, or y'all talked out? I know I am.
I'm done.
Too much.
Good job, thank you so much.
Okay. Well, I hope it was helpful.
It was very
Okay,
helpful.
good.
We just need to understand it better.
Yeah. Well, I think the big takeaway that I want y'all to understand is that, number one, from a cash flow position, we're okay, all right? And you have staff from top down that is being very conservative with how they're spending money, making sure they're spending it by the rules, cognizant of deadlines. And so what I tried to show you historically is that we're holding our own. If I came up here and I said, look, guys, we're $10.5 million, $2.5 million, $1.5 million in the hole, I would tell you that. But we're holding our own and we're breaking even. And I think in the COVID environment that we're in, with the effects on our economy and those kinds of things, I think we're doing good. I think Goldsboro is good. We're solid. We've got good, solid practices. We're moving forward with that.
Catherine, I think you just answered the question that I'm just going to put to you. Bottom line for the public, as well as those sitting here in this room, is that our loan balance is good. We're above the minimum. Our state of revenue coming in versus the budgets plus expenditures is reasonably good.
Yes.
In other words, we don't have any real major concerns at this point in time.
That is correct. And you will know if we do, and that's a good way to state it. Yes, thank you. Ms. Jones, did you have a question?
We did it.
Thank you. All right, I'm done.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for y'all's hard work and your whole department over there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, lady.
You got anybody left in Kinston?
No, you guys are,
What?
you guys are done if you're ready.
What'd she say?
Well, we were going to review the
Oh, yes.
output, right? So Melissa will back me up on that, but you had some action items for us. You want me to review that? Won't take too long. Okay, so starting with the first presentation on strategic plan, Councilmember Pollack asked us to take a look at a metric for diversity and promotions, so we will do that. On code enforcement, you wanted staff to bring back recommended changes to council for consideration. You wanted us to inform you on the past fines and collections and the way ahead. We also talked about trash pickup, keeping Goldsboro clean, so we'll develop a public information relations campaign and action plan with our county and nonprofit organization partners and get that information back to you.
And that shouldn't take too long, though.
Well, we got to figure out who's going to do it, right? So which organization is going to oversee that? Is it going to be the planning department? Is it going to be sanitation out at Public Works? There's nobody particularly that does this, and if you want to do it right, from what I've gathered in other places, they hire somebody to oversee this and do it. Maybe we do it in coordination with the council, the county, but we will find a way and get you that information. Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Polite, were you talking about page 34, working to recruit a more diverse population? Is that what?
You're talking about the strategic plan?
Yes.
Page 34?
Is that what you said?
Yeah, so
I don't want to be redundant. I don't. Is that
So,
what you?
Well, just to, I guess, go back to that.
Yeah, that's what I.
My question, I think we were talking about that. We were talking about the hiring was diverse, but the statistics. I just wanted some statistics on promotional. Not saying that you have to promote because of color, but
Right.
I just wanted a basis of what the
So not
stats
necessarily creating a metric, but just some information.
Right.
Okay.
And,
Yes, sir.
and what I wanted to take a look at as a council, for us to look at other ways to make sure that we're recruiting
Right.
a diverse population.
And I'll have our HR director talk about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you're talking about the campaign that you're trying to start up, and I understand, the benefit in partnerships and who's gonna head it up, but, I mentioned yesterday, is it something that the council can head up? I know the county commissioners are talking about it. Have we thought about doing a partnership with them and let us get the boots on the ground and kind of head it up and do it from that perspective?
So we can start it, just like you just said, we can start it.
Oh, yeah.
But we can't run it. We can't do it, right? You can't go out there twice a week and do it. Or
Say
I
what,
can't.
hold on, say what now?
Can you turn your mic down a little bit? It's up to you. Thank you, ma'am.
I said, to me, you can't go out there 2 or 3 times a week and do that. I don't know your schedule, but I'm just saying, I think that's going to be busier
I see what you're saying.
than we were.
Certainly, I would say the involvement of council members in their districts would be great.
Yeah.
But I would think we'd want a centrally run program, working with our public information officer to put that out, working with the county's information officer. There's certain things we could do with nonprofits or even businesses where, they keep a certain area around them clean.
If I can chime in, what kind of partnership do we have with Wayne County Jail? Like, I know one time, like, community service, what could we do as far as assigning more street cleanup? Because I know they used to do Salvation Army, but if we could kind of hone in on.
If Craig Honeycutt were here, he could probably talk a little bit more about that. I have had some initial discussions with him, and,
But
it's a funding issue, right?
favorable.
It's a pretty expensive endeavor to provide the proper oversight for
Okay, yes, sir.
that.
And they just changed the law. John Bell's trying to change the law.
I saw that, yeah.
All right, anything else?
Yes, sir. So, under the UDO brief that you had, you requested staff to come back to you and talk about some specific examples. So we will have that in the working session on Monday.
On what?
The specific examples for the UDO changes, that presentation, Councilmember Ham asked, can you give us some concrete examples of what we did in the past that we won't do in the
Planning
future?
Commission bringing things to us.
So Jennifer Collins is working on that. With the Wayne County Development Alliance, there was a question about the amount of jobs that were created that went to Wayne County residents as opposed to bringing in jobs and people from outside the county who now became a part of our community. So we'll see if we can get those numbers for you. The North Carolina Department of Commerce presentation, we're looking for an update on the local grants that would have happened in Goldsboro. And then with the finance presentation, Mayor mentioned we want to focus on the spending of that CD money, the $4.1 million, of which $1.2 million has been spent, remaining $2.9 million. Is there any other questions that we missed that we can take action on?
I'd like to see us come back in the latter part of March meeting to just briefly talk about staggered terms as to whether or not the council is in favor of staggered terms, period, without going into all the detailed process of it.
So we make it an old business item for discussion and figure out whether you want to do that. Okay?
Anybody got anything else? Everybody good? All right, well, thank everybody for coming, and we'll stand adjourned.
Thank you all.